at 5 p.m. The first thing I would like to draw your attention to in box under tonight's regular board meeting and then policies high importance, you will see a CCHA revision of G350. And based on feedback from yourselves and from the community, we have incorporated those changes to request a 24-hour prior notice to the staff member who scheduled the meeting if a parent or guardian plans to audio record a meeting. And in late breaking news, we're going to strike the last sentence of the first paragraph on the second page, which says video recording of meetings with parents or guardians is prohibited, because there have been several examples given of when that would be appropriate, and we don't want to prohibit something that would be needed. So in this current format, this is the one I would like to bring for a vote this evening. Does anyone have anything that they need to discuss? Rachel.
Dr. Reiner, I'm assuming that you have shared this with our special education leadership. Do they feel comfortable that that this policy matches what they're doing, or is something they can live with?
I have not shared the recording portion.
Okay. But the audio piece, the 24 hours, all of that, they are comfortable with?
I have not had dialogue with these recent, yeah.
Okay, okay.
They have been really recent changes. So.
Yeah.
Lawrence?
So we have some revisions. Shall we put this online for 1 month and next month you can vote for that, or this?
I don't believe that's necessary, and Jesse, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the substance of the policy is similar enough to what was put out there. Obviously, we've been able to receive feedback from the community because the community is fed back, so I think we're ready to go ahead and proceed with this in its current form. Is that acceptable legally? Okay. Daisha?
Okay, so procedure, and then we'll talk about this, is substantial. To me, this seems pretty substantial that we're removing some pretty serious things.
Pretty serious.
So how can you say that it's not substantial and doesn't need a, give the community, because like the community has had a month, but like Dr. Greiner said, is we don't have any staff or others that have had a month to see it.
Yes, you have the option if you want to hold on to it for another month. I just think it's required. I think the setup of the first reading and second reading is that there are changes from the first reading to second reading. And if the board feels that those changes are enough that you want to have more opportunity to review them, then you vote.
So the substantial, I know this is coming up over the years because it's in our policy, and I didn't know, is this a West Lafayette term or a legal term? That
It's a
substantial. Okay,
There's no
so
legal requirement. The first and second form reading, all boards do it slightly differently. Some even do have 3 as a regular. Some can do 1 on different things. So it's all just how you want to govern yourselves, your board.
okay, so right now, because that's been some of the debate, is difference of opinions of what is substantial, but that's just a personal preference of our board. That has nothing to do with legal requirements of substantial.
Correct.
Okay, that's helpful. I do wonder, the first point that I would like to make is I would love to allow the staff the same privilege that we have allowed our community to see the changes and share any concerns if we're setting a policy. My second question is, we're going from audio recordings has some requirements the way it's set up right now. Video recordings has no requirements. And don't we want to make it the same, or? That's my first question. I actually have a couple of questions.
Well, I think that you can hide an audio recorder a lot more easily than you could hide a video recording. Okay. So that would be very obvious if I was video recording you versus having a audio recording in my purse. I think that's probably the logic there, but.
So my question is, what we're saying in our policy, the way it's written now is, if a parent chooses to video record, there's no advance notice, which that really goes contrary to Indiana law, which says you have to get consent from others when you want to video record them. So
So if we were to remove the word audio in the first paragraph on the second page, would that satisfy your concern? Parents or guardians are allowed to record meetings.
I would think it would address the intent that it feels like this policy has. My second question is the community member that kind of got this ball rolling with a lot of concerns. One of the concerns brought up was about the advance notice and that what happens when a parent hasn't provided that advance notice. So it was shared with the board an example of a parent shows up at a meeting, is unaware of this policy, which they had shared, this has happened in the past, asks if they can record. And it's like, I mean, is the answer no, you can't because you didn't ask 24 hours in advance?
Jesse?
No, the answer, school staff would have essentially two options.
Okay.
They could either proceed, allowing parents to, either option, parents will eventually get to record. It's either allowed to proceed at that meeting, record, and the
Okay.
school may or may not have its own equipment to record at the same time. Or to say simply, we don't have equipment to record at this time, can we reschedule to a later date when we can have the necessary equipment in place?
That's what I envision happening. The other thing is, I'm just not going to require staff to be recorded video. And so I don't know if we'd make arrangements for Zoom if they're like, I don't want to be on a video recording, but I'm just not requiring that. So
So my question is, can we have something in place that sets how we're going to inform parents about this procedure? So that as, trying to think what the terminology, as a notice of case conference, that's when we share with the parents, if you would like to record audio, video, would you please let us know?
Would that be an administrative guideline more than a policy?
could be, but they're doing it now. Families record now, so.
But the issue that we heard through that was shared with us and others have also shared is what's being done now is families are recording. Not always do the others in the room know they're recording, number one. Number two, most families are unaware of what policy we have in place. And so to me, if we're putting a policy in place that matters, how can we educate and inform our parents instead of at the meeting kind of saying heads up?
Rachel?
So the information that was shared by the patron in particular who had questions, I think it's important to recognize that every family, there's a process, an established process for IEPs, case conferences, and how those things operate. The patron who shared from their unique perspective and is not in any way presenting on behalf of people with different perspectives, really. It was really focused on what their experience has been. So as I understand it, and it's been a couple of years since I've been to one, but as I understand it, and I just would appreciate it if I make sure that my understanding is clear with you, Dr. Greiner, I'm not trying to put you on the spot, but I think you know the answers to these things. Case conferences can be called by the parent. They're held annually, but they can be called by the parent at any point in time.
Absolutely.
Okay. And there's a certain set of people who are routinely invited to participate in these case conferences, such as teachers, counselors, social or area specialists, that type of things. Those people can all be invited to attend. But if, for example, a parent wanted a special case conference, which they can request at any time, they could say, hey, I would really like for the math teacher to be there because this is an area of particular concern. So
Absolutely.
They have control over who attends the meeting. Okay. They have control over when the meeting is scheduled, as I understand it. I always was able to say, Tuesday doesn't work for me. Could we possibly do it on a Thursday? Or
It's very much a collaborative, family-friendly.
And so when they come in, it's the role of the staff present to present their progress on the IEP, provided it's already an established IEP. So they would give different data points and reporting based on how they see the child is performing on the previous year's or time period's goal.
Correct.
Okay. And so then in my experience, that's been an opportunity for the family members and the staff members to really have a collaborative conversation about what has worked, what has not worked, what could be improved, what other adjustments might need to be made. Is that typically what happens in IEP conferences?
Correct.
Okay. And so from that point then, an adjusted IEP is manufactured during the course of that meeting, which lays out, hey, we've discussed this. These are some things we're going to do next year or in the next time period. And then that is documented, correct, in writing?
Yes.
Okay. And so then that plan is shared in writing with the parents or whoever is representing the child in that meeting. And they have the opportunity to review it. And if they get home and review it and they're not comfortable with that, they could come back and ask for an adjustment on that.
Right.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. And say they tried 3 new things and 6 months later it just was a fail. It wasn't going well. They could say, hey, I'd like to have another case conference or we could talk about all this again.
Correct.
Okay. So through that IEP process, the parent still always maintains the right to have conversation with any individual educator involved with their child on any given day about ongoing things happening, day-to-day transactions.
Of course.
They're not forfeiting their right to that.
Correct.
Okay. So it seems to me that parents have a really collaborative opportunity to work within the structure of an IEP with every single person involved in educating their child.
That's the intent, yes.
Okay. So what we're talking about right now is the ability of a parent to audio or video record a very small part of a universally collaborative process in the education of their child and their child's unique needs.
Correct.
Okay. Thanks. I really appreciate you refreshing me on that.
You're welcome.
I don't have any other questions. I'm fine with the policy as it is.
As it is in the CCHA revision?
It's a great idea to remove the audio video, just to say recording.
Just record? Okay. Is there anything else on this one?
So my question, that I was sharing, I'm not sure how it relates to what she was sharing, but I know in some school districts that they are informing parents ahead of time when they send out like the notice of a case conference, the email that's sent out saying, we'd like to meet with you, that one of the things included in that is you are allowed to record the meetings. Are you planning to do that, to give the school a heads up? Then the parents and the school is very clearly involved. And so what I'm asking is, can that be something that's either included in this, or what can we do so that parents can be better educated and informed? Because we've learned that that hasn't been the case in the past. With understanding.
I think I can talk with my team about letting them know when they're scheduling a case conference, hey, it would be courteous to remind them that if they want to record, please let us know in advance so we're all prepared. And in a situation where they're not, we would do exactly what Jesse suggested. We would just reschedule it in a very friendly, collaborative way. We certainly wouldn't say we're moving on with the meeting and you're not recording.
Right, but so what I want is I want our policy to be as friendly and understanding to anyone that reads it. So if I'm coming into a meeting and I'm feeling, usually it feels like in some cases people are choosing to record because there is that lack of trust or misunderstanding. I'm not saying that's always the case, just sometimes. There's already that feeling of vulnerability, and so I think let's remove any sort of like this policy is restricting me or I'm not allowed to do this. I think that's part of the reason we took out the trespassing and everything is because we're not wanting that. So the hope is to have it in writing what we are trying to do. Because in the past, our policy did not match what we were saying we were trying to do, and in practice, some weren't witnessing. It wasn't consistent. And if it's in our policy, to me, it would be a lot more consistent.
So is the board suggesting it's still not friendly the way that you guys have revised it?
I'm just wondering about adding something about, and I don't know what's the best, I would love to hear what staff recommends, but something about the parents will be informed or this information will be shared with parents about before meetings.
I don't think we put that in a policy. That's my recommendation. But I do think that it would be fine to say, hey, let's be family friendly.
Okay.
And when you're scheduling a meeting, suggest that.
Okay.
Or remind that, hey, if you want to record, let us know in advance so we're all prepared. And it doesn't hold it up and cause a situation where we may be rescheduling.
So where would, I'm still learning how this all works. Like her recommendation, so I've been a teacher. I have a parent walk in and they say, I want to record this meeting. And I'm like, never thought about it truthfully. I mean, when I was a teacher, that wasn't something that I dealt with. So where does that go where the recommendation is that I can know as a teacher that I can say, okay, I'm going to pull out my recording device, or I'm not ready to record, could we reschedule it? So our teachers and staff, like this conversation honestly does feel like an administrative guidelines, teacher guidelines. But where does that go? Because I've not ever seen that shared before in the past. How will a teacher be told this information that you just shared so that they are empowered in that moment to know how to handle it?
So they'll have an administrator or a PAR there. And so most likely the PAR would take the initiative to focus on getting the recordings and get the meeting going properly, or saying we're going to reschedule so that we're prepared. That's where it wouldn't be the teacher's responsibility to do that.
I guess my question is, when it's not an IEP meeting, because this is not just where, IEP meeting is the ones that we're most concerned about, which is what we've been talking about, but this is just general meetings, meaning that parents could record a meeting when they meet with me as a teacher, which is no problem, but I'm just saying, shouldn't they have the same input and feedback and guidelines as everyone? So it's consistent throughout the whole district.
Ask the question differently,
No,
because I lost you for a
So
in the middle of
this
that.
policy, if I understand it correctly, we're approving it that deals with all meetings.
Yes.
Which means it could be just a student and a student parent teacher meeting. So there wouldn't be an administrator there, or maybe necessarily a para or someone like that. So my question is, in what way can we, either through a policy, administrative guidelines, or in what ways do we train or teach our teachers, not teach, train our teachers on how to handle this, so that if tomorrow a parent were to say this, they would know how to respond?
I think it would be important after this policy passes
Okay,
to administrators to sit down with teachers
Okay.
and say, if you're in a position where a parent's wanting to record a meeting, you might want to bring me up to speed, and we might want to work through that together.
so sorry, just having been there, what happens when I hire a teacher next year? Like, do we have any material that we say, here's teacher training, or here's administrative training through the what?
We did the new hire requirement vector training, and just make it one of the mandatory trainings that people have to do within a certain number of days of starting the school year. Documentation then that the person has received the training, we can put it in all new hire training requirements, and we can do it by employee group as well. So it would necessarily be someone who's hired to be a paraeducator, but a teacher employee group we could do the vector training requirement, that it simply gives the policy and that it outlines if you are, if you are in a meeting and you become aware that someone wishes to record it, and we also encourage you to record it, please we can lay it out.
And that's called vector.
It's safe, it's Vector, I think is the new name. Companies buy each other out, and I think it's currently called Vector
It
Training.
used to be safe hiring.
It's the company's name. Yes.
So would that be the way, because this isn't the only policy where we're, putting things in place that we want the teachers to feel like they know what our policies are. Is that where we want to then encourage it, check, is that going there? In that vector?
That is one possible way, yes. There are lots of things that we do using the Vector Solutions training to ensure that we meet guidelines for training at the state and federal level
Okay.
for a variety of employee groups.
Okay. Helpful to understand. Thank you.
Okay. I would like to get this into a format that we agree on before we take it to our administrators. So given the CCHA revision, if we remove the word audio on the first line of the second page, and we remove video recording of meetings with parents or guardians as prohibited at the end of that same paragraph, will we all be able to support this? Because I don't think it's fair to take it to Shelby or Stephanie or anybody and say, here are 9,000 different options. Yes, Lawrence?
Regarding these 24 hours kind of notification, I'm just wondering when they have schedules or change something, they have last minute meetings. In that case, do they have to follow these 24-hour rules?
would assume so, but I think if everyone in the meeting is amenable to recording, then they can record the meeting. I think, excuse me, that providing 24 hours notice gives the school employee the ability to say, I'm sorry, I don't want to be recorded, or I want to bring in my administrator, or I want to bring my own recording equipment. But if everyone in the meeting says, sure, go ahead and record it, it's going to be fine, right? Like, go ahead, Rachel.
Well, I would just question, I mean, in that situation, which I think would be fairly rare, but in that situation, I'm not sure that we would want a teacher to have the expectation that they would need to use their personal cell phone to record a parent meeting.
Sure.
That's not the intent. They're not hired and don't have an agreement in their contract that I'm aware of for use of personal device. So I would have some concern about that. And I think that's where, when you get into the technology component, it would be important that the administrator of the building be brought into it.
Right.
So,
So in that case, if it's a last minute meeting and the parent wants to record it, having the 24 hours notice allows the teacher to bring in the administrator and the equipment that they need. So,
correct.
And then I think we need to be mindful that there may be staff that, as I mentioned earlier, that don't want to be video recorded. And I think we have to think about what does that look like to respect the staff member while respecting the parent. And there's ways around that. Could be that they attend via Zoom. And so their voice is heard, which would be the case in a recorded one anyway, but that their face and body language aren't in the meeting, as Jesse suggested, because I think you have to be careful and be conscientious of your staff in a situation where you're now talking about a video recording of an educational meeting.
Then, I mean, if 24-hour notification is kind of optional, then how we can, I mean, wording this clause over there? I mean,
Is the 24 hours really optional?
I don't
Is
think
there
it
any
is.
matter that happens inside a school building that requires a meeting? I mean, unless there's an immediate harm issue, I feel like a 24-hour pause is always possible. Is that true?
I think so. And I think that if they don't give notice and everyone has the availability to record and everyone's in agreement, you can still record if they didn't give the 24-hour notice. But the point is that if you don't give 24-hour notice, the meeting may be rescheduled.
maybe then, I mean, this sentence right now looks like, the wording looks like, I mean, the parents or whoever the visitors have the obligation to provide the notification. But if they don't provide it, we still can allow them to do that. So this kind of is not very clear. I mean, so maybe there's some better ways to express this kind of situation.
I am
mean,
open to all your suggestions if you have them.
No, I don't have. I'm just wondering. Say, if you tell us, that's good. We want you to tell us. But if you don't tell, come in, just walk in, we can have that. So that kind of situation. So I don't. I mean, I agree. We have no problem with the issue. Just how to use which one. What's the best word to?
The way I figure it, the people who've written these, including Jesse, are professional lawyers, and this is their job. And so I'm not going to nitpick their language. If it says what we intend for it to say, that's good enough for me, And if a parent or a teacher needs an interpretation, they can ask questions. I don't think we need to chisel it in a stone tablet every tiny thing.
Should include.
Yeah.
So you should include if you want to keep the meeting going, and there's a good chance you'll still get to keep the meeting going if people are prepared from both sides to record, but it's clear. And if I, as an administrator, parent says they want to record, and I'm able to go ahead and start the meeting because I got my recording equipment, and I've talked with the teacher, and we're all good, we can start. Am I
Sorry, tell me
misinterpreting
what
that? Jesse?
should include. What were you reading?
Okay, I looked at hers, read it.
I know there's lots, so I just want to make sure I understood.
A parent or guardian who wishes to audio record the meeting should inform the staff member who scheduled the meeting at least 3 instructional days notice prior to the scheduled meeting. If there are concerns with audio recording, this will be shared in writing with the parent or guardian at least 1 day prior to the scheduled meeting.
And that was struck, though. We're in a different version. If you go to Box and go to, let me back up. 2024 board meetings, 812. And then it's CCHA revision dash G350.
Maybe parents or guardians encouraged
Corporation
to
requests that
provide
parent guardian provide 24 hours.
or
prior.
something like that.
Hang on, my computer's screwing up.
Or suggested.
Can we add to the end when possible? That gives it so it's not black and white, that someone feels like if they didn't give 24 hours, they're not allowed to, and then it's at Dr. Greiner's? I don't know.
But I think that's the point. If they don't give 24 hours notice, their meeting could be rescheduled.
Fair, but I feel like what we're discussing, what Dr. Greiner said, is the staff has the ability to say, we're all okay with it, even though you didn't give 24 hours.
But
So
I
it'd be
think,
nice if
my
our,
point was, I think the policy, let me interrupt you.
no, you're fine.
Okay, I think the policy allows.
That's the
that.
way you read
Yeah,
it, okay.
Do you think the policy allows that?
Yeah, it allows it. The corporation requests, the corporation does not require. And so if 24-hour notice is not provided, then the meeting could go forward as scheduled.
Or request, okay,
You could add language, the end of that sentence, if you decided,
if possible. or
that
something.
says, yeah, as possible, or something along the lines of, notice not provided 24 hours ahead of time may result in staff requesting the meeting be rescheduled when recording equipment can be provided or gathered. I'm not thinking of the right word for that one right now, but
I like that a lot.
Yeah,
That
request
that
kind
solves
of,
all our problems.
Where would you put that?
I'd probably put it right after that sentence.
Where the video recording got struck?
Yeah, the corporation, so it would read, the corporation requests that a parent or guardian provide 24 hours prior notice, as my computer goes to sleep, to the staff member who scheduled the meeting if they plan to audio record a meeting, and that's a period. The next sentence would read, if the requested 24 hours notice is not provided, school staff may request, or I'm not trying not to use the word request
reschedule.
again. May seek to reschedule the meeting if recording equipment cannot be acquired within that time frame.
Okay.
Something like that. I spoke fast, so I don't know.
You did. I can't type that fast. I type really fast. Would you please add that into the thing and send it to Roberta, and we'll clean it up. We'll give it to our special educators and allow them to say whether or not it's reasonable, and then we'll bring it back next month and vote. What?
So there's 3 spots in here that actually says audio recordings, and I think if we're going down the route, we just want to strike the audio word in all 3 spots in that paragraph, if we're,
I
just to
see
make
2
it
of them,
very
please.
clear.
Where's the third, please? You see
The third one
the
is.
first line, the third line.
Okay, maybe I counted, sorry. Maybe just 2.
One thing that has been
Oh,
very
third paragraph. Okay.
successful historically is that
Third
the
paragraph.
draft policy has been shared with the administrative leadership for that area, who have that area of expertise in advance of us getting it, so they could take a look at it and give us helpful feedback on the content. I don't know if that's a possibility, but it might be.
We may have a whole different staff by the time we get through all of these.
I
We may
agree.
all be.
But I'm
6 feet
saying in
deep.
certain areas, we found that going to the specialists in those areas resulted in a far better policy than what would be, whittled away at by people who don't know as much.
Yeah, and our administrators, they have these in a file, so, not necessarily for this one because it was
This last minute
general,
changes.
general meetings as well. Didn't go necessarily special ed director yet, but it can. But yes, the administrators have these in a file. The ones that are up for first reading and then the ones that are up for second reading, we're keeping them in there so that during our admin meetings, they can ask any questions they have and or give input.
I found the third, sorry, it's in the second paragraph of that section. There's 3 audios that I think we want to
audio.
mix.
Well, in section 4, I don't know that we need to necessarily strike them because it
No,
says
sorry,
record
just in
audio or
section
video.
3 is what I was talking about. Section 3 has 3 audio
Yeah,
record.
you're right, 3.
And I was just saying, to make it consistent, I think we just want to cut all of it.
But regarding, maybe to Sean, regarding after we get these kind of final versions, when you circulate around the faculty, the staff members, teachers, so how do you do that? Because we also want, this policy impact pretty much everybody. So
We'll send it to the special ed director and make sure that it's workable with their practice.
Or
We
maybe
don't need to
some
send
other-
it to every teacher.
You won't say, okay.
No.
I think maybe some
We're
other-
never gonna get anywhere if we poll every teacher on every policy. Yes, Rachel?
Since it
Not
seems there's
everything.
work to do on this policy, and I know that we have another one that's very close. Is there a chance in the 30 seconds left in this work session that we could talk about C-375? So perhaps we could vote on it tonight.
That'd be great. That would be super. Let me get to that. So we are looking at suspension and expulsion of students, and basically the difference of opinion on this one comes down to whether a court is going to hear appeals or a school board is going to hear appeals. Would anyone like to share any previous practice at other districts, how often this happens, any additional information about suspensions and expulsions and hearings and whatnot?
I don't have any additional information than what we talked about last
Okay.
month.
Yes, Stacia?
Just to clarify it, my understanding is we're not deciding if the court's going to hear it or the school board. We're just asking that the school board be an option before they go to court.
Okay.
So
Does anyone else have anything to say about that one?
As I understand it, this is, I'm sorry, I shouldn't have raised my hand.
That's fine.
As I understand it, this one is in second reading, and basically we have a difference of opinion, and we just need to take a vote on which version we put out tonight. Is that what you believe as well?
Yes, that's correct. And what I intend to do is bring forward the C-375 as it was written by Church and vote on that. And then we will bring forward the other version and vote on that. So if you prefer the version where the board hears appeals before the court, then you would want to vote no on the first one and yes on the second one, and vice versa. Is that acceptable to everybody? Yui?
The revised version, last sentence, they can also consider administrative appeal for the suspension. Administrative appeal means appeal to other administrators who are in charge of that particular school.
I don't see where you're at here.
And the revised
It's in
version,
the blue highlights.
right? Yeah, I think
At
it's
the
right.
bottom.
At the bottom. Okay, has voted to hear appeals from expulsion hearings within 10 calendar days. They can also consider administrative appeals. Yeah, who's they? Would that be the parents or the board? Or,
I read it as the parents, but I'm not sure whether
Okay.
I understand this right.
It's they is the board.
the board can also commit.
They is the board.
So if we
It's-
were to say we can't meet within the next 10 calendar days, we can send it to an administrator appeal? Is that, who wrote this? I don't know where this came from.
So the revision came from me, but it came from CCH, one of theirs. Bill, I can go look it up. I had tried to just use wording that they had recommended, because they, and correct me if I'm wrong, but my understanding is CCHA had two ways for this policy, and so I found school districts that approved that and then had just copied that wording. It's where that came from, but I can find the exact school district I had used. So I can find out that if you like.
What would an administrative appeal be? Would that be where the principals from a different school heard it?
Well, so the law provides essentially two options, right? The board hears appeals or it doesn't.
Uh-huh.
And so I don't know what that's referencing, and I was going to look at our recommended language when a board does choose to hear appeals to see what it says.
Okay.
I'm concerned the school district you might have looked at may not have been a CCHA policy.
Okay.
Might be a
And
CCHA client, but not every
changed it.
client
They
does every
adjust their
policy through us, so.
And our current policy, so maybe this will help us. Our current policy that we have in place right now says the board will not hear appeals of administrative decisions related to suspension.
Right, which
So-
would be a decision of the administration.
So that's maybe just the opposite. They can consider administrative appeals for suspensions. It's just the opposite of what our current policy says. So however our current policy works, I don't know how that is. That actually is the opposite of it. Yes?
Yeah, yes, I would agree, I would assume Jesse agrees. It's a matter of, what I hear you saying, Mrs. Mumford, is either the board is going to continue not to hear them, or they're going to hear them. And so if they're going to hear them, we would change that language based on the recommendation of Church Hill.
If I understand this, so there's two things that's been in our policy, is suspensions and expulsions. And am I correct, the state's only asking on the expulsion part? If the board votes for it, it doesn't involve the suspension part.
Correct.
Okay, so then in our current school board policy, they have taken suspensions and expulsions, put them together, and say no one's allowed to appeal to the board. So this new revision is saying these are two separate items. The state's not requiring us to vote on suspensions. They're only requiring us to vote on how we handle expulsions. But suspensions is something we still have to decide how we're going to handle too. Is the board, is the community or parents allowed to appeal to the board on suspension? So that's why it's a little, did that make sense? So I think that, I mean, that's why it's two separate sentences, because the state does not require us to have anything in it about suspensions.
Yeah, I think that's.
Those of you who've been on the board for more than 10 years, have you ever heard an appeal about a suspension or expulsion?
No.
Nope.
I've been on the board for less than 2 years, and Rachel had sent an email to the board that says parents were interested in appealing to the board, but she informed them they're not allowed to. So,
I'm not
So
sure that
once
that
in-
context is correct.
I mean, it said a discipline issue both in, I don't remember the exact wording, and you said the policy says they cannot appeal to the board, so that was that. But anyways.
So the general philosophy guiding all of our policies should be what's going to best serve the needs of the student. So from my viewpoint, what serves the needs of the student the best is a solution closest to the student. So in that situation, our administrators, our school leadership have done a really beautiful job in working with families to come to effective resolutions for students. The only time when I think it would come to the board, if we were to change the policy, would be when there was not an effective decision at the school level. And as been pointed out in the past, once it has reached that point where there were truly something that inflamed, we as a board are put in a decision-making position where we have to choose and essentially make a decision about the employment and the performance of our personnel at exactly the same time. So moving it out to a court scenario that can be objective would, from my viewpoint, if we were ever to become to that place, be the best solution for the student. But that's just my opinion on it.
Okay, thank you. Jesse, do you have any thoughts?
So speaking from a legal perspective and not trying to imbibe any suggestion one way or another. So the difference between expulsion and suspension, right, is one, you're depriving a student of their education altogether through expulsion. And so the law, both at the state and federal level, encompasses a much more precise procedure to ensure that that right to education is not being withheld unless we've really done due diligence. Suspension, anything less than 10 days. And federal and state law only require a meeting with the administrator who's issuing that decision and an opportunity to hear and respond to the allegations. So it's just a difference in the level of process the law requires us to have. That does not, dictate what the board must decide or should decide on what kind of process to provide students in those situations.
Okay. I think we're going to go ahead and vote on this one in the method that I suggested earlier, because I believe the cleaner policy is the first one, which came directly from CCHA. That would be my recommendation that we go with that one because it doesn't include that additional language at all. But I would really prefer to get something done. Does anyone have anything to say about any of the policies that are found in process? We could start with communicable diseases and work our way down, or we could start with nepotism and work our way up. We have 10 minutes.
I do have a couple of questions. I had asked to prioritize policies that I think is really what our families and students need priorities.
Where would you like to start, Mrs. Mumford?
So, I mean, I have given the list to you both, several times. So my question is so C200.
Perfect. Let's start with C200. Why not?
Yes, that's a good one.
Is that one under needs first reading?
So just to clarify my understanding, all of these policies that are in there have had a first reading.
Correct. It was quite some time ago, and I had anticipated that people would be interested in giving it another month before we voted on anything so that everyone had the opportunity to have feelings. What would you like to share about C200?
So I shared a couple revisions
They're in blue.
that are in blue.
Mm-hmm.
So the first one was the paragraph that says bullying is defined as overt, unwanted, repeated acts or gestures. And then I asked to add or severe one-time incidents with the potential to be repeated. Is the first revision that I had requested.
Okay, let me see if that just didn't land in the right folder. Yep, okay, hold on just one second. Where did it go? So you can find that under the work session folder, one up from where we are. It's C200 anti-bullying suggested revision. It just didn't make it into the folder, which is fine. And then your second suggestion was to call it kindergarten through 12th as well. And I don't think that's substantive enough to cause a fuss. We do have kindergartners. And then this consistent with other legal obligations, the corporation, is that you as well? Will prioritize the safety of the target of the bullying. Was that your addition?
Everything on this.
Everything blue
In blue
on this
were
one?
things that I had asked for.
I have concern over the language, changing the definition of bullying to say with something severe. These are words that are very subjective. This is severe. What makes it severe? What's severe to one person isn't necessarily severe to another. Has the ability or potential to be repeated. How do we define that exactly? I think that kind of soft, subjective language in policy is less than ideal.
Okay.
And Jesse, I'm going to really request that when we start making changes to policies that you guys have made, that you really help us to make sure that we're staying aligned to the law to protect the corporation. So if you have any concerns, please speak up.
Yeah, this one is a tricky one. So it is language that's from guidance from the Indiana Department of Education suggesting what corporations should respond to in bullying, but it's not actually found in the legal definition of bullying. So it's one of those thread the needles of we have guidance from the Department of Education saying we're going to look at bullying to include these other aspects, which does broaden the definition versus what the law actually says from the General Assembly, what it defines bullying as. I don't know if that's helpful at all in crafting the ultimate policy because you have the General Assembly saying one thing and defining it one way and the Department of Education sort of adding on to that.
Is this an area of the law that is a particular vulnerability to school districts?
So it is something, from a strict liability standpoint, I want to say no just because there's no private right of action for bullying, but that certainly goes easily into negligence claims and harassment claims if it's based upon a protected class. So yes, in a general sense, no in a very specific sense of bullying, if that makes sense.
Yep. So would you have a recommendation about perhaps leaving the policy the way it was written in order to eliminate additional liability? My concern is that if we start fooling around with this one in particular, we could find ourselves adopting legal liability that we don't necessarily want to take on because we have fooled with the language, or this one just seems like it could be very vulnerable.
I don't think you increase potential liability. I think you just increase the potential for not complying with your own policy.
Okay.
So you increase the risk of negligence.
Which is liable. That's what worries me. I mean, the courts want to see your policy and then they want to.
Right. But
So if-
policy doesn't always equate to the negligence standard. There's a nuance there.
So basically, if we have more stringent policies, maybe can reduce our risk to get legal issues. Maybe, what do you think? Maybe if we have maybe more stringent policies, so staff in our school maybe follow this one, and then they can reduce from our corporation point of view, basically reduce the risk of any legal issue.
I think the negligence standard is the reasonable duty. I think that stays the same regardless, if that makes sense. It's how any school corporation would respond to a situation is the standard you will be held to in negligence situations.
To be clear, I don't have a problem with having a very stringent policy. My concern is with vague and subjective measures of the outcome.
Right.
Because that's what's being recommended here is something that's very, very subjective. And we already know from reports about this, when we received a report as a board, that there's a lot of confusion among our population and our community at times over what constitutes bullying and what's just being a jerk. And that's, you know, that I would have concern over inserting policy into that vague piece.
Do we know why the IDOE recommends this terminology being included? I mean, because to me, it feels like it's trying to protect more of these situations that may be a gray area for our students. But I don't know. Do you know, and not that you need to.
I'd just be speculating like you are.
Okay. Because to me, this seems more supportive of students that are trying to get support for having some serious situations. This isn't just some random wording. This is coming from the IDOE. So, but many of these were from a community member that actually sent to the whole board these recommendations. And I just took those recommendations that I had agreed with from the points the community member had shared and turned them into this. So possibly if this is something that we're seriously looking into, we could share that with the community and see what kind of feedback we get. Because I don't know, I don't have a lot of experience with this. I was just trying to listen to the community, and to me made sense, but that's the reasoning behind that request.
Okay. I think it's important to remember that one person with a lot of opinions isn't necessarily the whole community.
Oh,
And we shouldn't give too much weight to a handful of opinions when we're dealing with legal liability. It's our job to protect the school district from that liability.
I totally agree.
All right, what I would like to do with this one, if it is okay, is have you, Jesse, have you review the revisions. We're going to call this the official first reading on both versions of the policy. And we will come back with a recommendation from you next month as to which one you believe is the best option for the district. And then also, could you take it to the principals and make sure that they don't see any legal issues with any of the wording?
Yeah, I would suspect, so my recommendation would be that on a policy like this, we work very closely with our legal counsel. And so I want to hear what legal counsel has to say. And from there, I want to involve administration.
Okay, that's reasonable. Can we make that happen?
Absolutely.
Great, awesome. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and adjourn at 5:50. Oh, does anyone have public comment for the work session? We'll do the other public comment later. Okay, great, thank you. I'm going to adjourn the work session at 5:50 so we can prepare for real meeting. Thank you. Well, it's only 5:59, but we're all here, and, oh, there, it's 6 o'clock now. So I'll call to order the August 12th meeting of the West Lafayette Community School Corporation Board of School Trustees. And this is the best part of this job, is getting to see all of these old friends and to recognize Dr. Karen Springer. So Chris, would you like to, or Representative Campbell, sorry. Come on up. And feel free to spin around and however you,
Can you hear me okay?
yes.
All right. Thank you. Karen meant a lot to all of us. I knew her for several years, probably since you were in preschool. I remember the second grade musicals and her choreographing those musicals, serving with her in several capacities, working on Global Fest, library boards, and of course, seeing her for many years at the school board. I'm just going to share a few things, if I can. Of course, it changed pages on me. So Karen was born September 5th, 1955 in Centerville, Ohio. She was an aerobics dance instructor for over 40 years. And she worked with students through the Disability Resource Center at Purdue University, helping them take notes for their courses and acting as a scribe for exams. Karen was extremely proud of her 31 years of service to the West Lafayette Community School Corporation. She served 24 years on this West Lafayette Community School Corporation Board, with 4 years as president, 11 years as vice president, and was awarded the School Board Association School Board Member of the Year in 2022. She was very involved in the Music Boosters, as I mentioned, helping out with that choreography in those Mr. B's second grade musicals, for those of us that remember those. Let's see. Oh, yep. She served 20 years on the West Lafayette Parks and Recreation Board and was president for many years, and was a longtime member of the Global Fest, and worked on the naturalization ceremony. I remember those days. Worked at Tippecanoe County Public Library and with Read to Succeed programs at the West Lafayette Elementary and Oakland Elementary Schools. She spent time at the Food Finders Bank and was designated Co-Volunteer of the Month in March 2018. She was very accomplished and such a big part of this community. And it was very much prompted by friends of hers that we needed to recognize her for all that she's done in this community. So I'm so honored to present this Circle of Corydon from Eric J. Holcomb, Governor of the state of Indiana. To all to whom these present may come, greetings. Whereas the early leaders of our state gathered in Corydon in 1816 to adopt the first Indiana Constitution and to create the state of Indiana. Whereas Corydon was Indiana's first capital and center of leadership in the early and formative years of our state. Whereas, like the founders of our great state, many others have made remarkable contributions to the betterment of Indiana and its people, and therefore are deserving of the consideration for membership in the Indiana General Assembly, Circle of Corydon. And whereas Representative Chris Campbell has made it be known that the illustrious benefactions of one Dr. Karen Springer, who demonstrated in life and in service to the people of the state of Indiana the qualities exemplified by our state's greatest citizens. Henceforth, being deemed worthy of such recognition, the individual named above is hereby declared a distinguished member of the Circle of Cordon, in testimony whereof the undersigned set their hands and caused to be affixed the Great Seal of the state, done at the city of Indianapolis on this 6th day of May in the year 2023, was when it was originally. And this is signed by Eric Holcomb, our governor, and myself, who nominated Dr. Carrie Springer. And thank you so much for letting us use your mom for so many years. My pleasure.
Thank you. Okay, next we have our communication from the audience, and it looks like Don Collar. Oh, and I'd love to see all of you, but if you were just here for Karen, you're not going to hurt my feelings if you take off. So thank you so much, Laurel, for being here. Hi, Don. How are you?
Hi, how are you?
It's good to see you.
It certainly is nice to see Dr. Springer honored, and it would be very nice if all members of all school boards in the state of Indiana could emulate and use her as a role model. Okay, this is why I'm here now. Early in the month of July 2024, my wife was on her computer in our kitchen. As I was walking through, I passed behind her. Now, unless my wife specifically asks me, I do not look at the screen. This time, as I walked by, I noticed that the screen had, in large font, the logo for West Lafayette Schools, a date of June 10, 2024, and the school board meeting summary. I asked my wife what she was reading, and she replied, I am reading the minutes to the last school board meeting. I always assumed that if I wanted to find out what was going on at school board meetings, I had two options. I could attend the meeting, or if I wanted to, I could go to the West Lafayette Board Info Meetings website. I always thought that's where I was supposed to go. Where official live streams of school board meetings, 8 items in a drop-down menu, agendas, minutes signed by the president and the secretary of the board, audio and board documents dating 2024 through 2021 are well organized in an easy format, posted officially by arguably one of the top 3 school corporations in the state of Indiana. Unbeknownst to me, there is still an unofficial written summary of the West Lafayette school board meetings floating around the internet on Nextdoor, where people look for lost pets and plumbers, produced by a single member of the school board. Dual board minutes only create confusion and chaos. I do recall when Mrs. Witt was the board president, the topic of individuals publishing their own meeting summaries was repeatedly discussed. She continually urged board members to refrain from doing so. To my amazement, this is still happening. Now, there is a difference between can't and won't. Can't usually means someone lacks the ability to do something, while won't usually means someone lacks the desire to do something. Mrs. Mumford's summary states that this document is her summary, not the official meeting minutes. Her personal thoughts and opinions are in italics and represent her views, which do not necessarily reflect those of other members of the school board, and will use first person when describing personal thoughts and opinions. At the end of the summary, there was a listing of the school board candidates, which I thought might be interesting to see who's running. Mrs. Mumford could have said that George Lyle and David Purpura are running for a second time and not mention anything about a PAC. Mentioning PAC involvement with candidates is intentionally using a dog whistle, as PACs were very controversial in the previous election. Mrs. Mumford discusses member Yu Yin, and she states, and I quote, "I think she has done a great job as a board member, asking questions and keeping the community informed." This was not italicized as she stated she would do. This was her personal opinion. Where Mrs. Mumford discusses Board President Amy Austin, she states, and I quote, "I think she has done a poor job as a school board member and an even worse job as board president." This is her personal thought, and once again, it was not italicized. I was stunned. I was shocked to read Mrs. Mumford's comments. I find them to be unnecessarily cruel, hurtful. I also find them to be unprofessional, objectionable, and lacking in loyalty to a fellow board member and the school board itself. Each board member must put the interests of the organization before their personal and professional interests. The organization's needs come first. Do your job is a phrase that is often used in society today, popularized by a number of Super Bowl coaches or football coaches in the NFL who won Super Bowl championships. This means that when you try to do too much, you become ineffective, and the entire team suffers, which ultimately leads to failure. My opinion on the protracted discussion regarding student expulsions, it is not the business of the school board to be involved in expulsions. School boards are in the vision business, not the nuts and bolts of the daily operation of the school. Hire good people, get out of their way, and let them do their job. I'd like to thank the board for the opportunity to state my opinion. Somebody left a cell phone. I'm guessing that it's Chris.
Oh. Thank you,
I
sir.
hope that's not on record, Chris. Although I know that it's here. And I would add, and maybe this is a little bit too personal, but I look forward to seeing my comments in your summary, because I don't think that's going to stop. And it
Thank
should.
you. Aaron Moonwalker, you are next.
Take any way to move this
You're free
suit
to
giraffes,
lift it up. if you'd
people a
like.
little taller. Does that work? Can you hear me?
I can
okay?
hear you.
Okay. Thank you for reading my emails on policy G350 and for any positive revisions you plan to make, as the drafted policy is still more restrictive than state law and the district's current and past practices. I hope to address the May meeting discussion now. When discussing how the policy would apply to IEP meetings, Dr. Greiner said he wouldn't want to hold a meeting that was recorded, that wouldn't be face-to-face trust. Ms. Witt said recording meetings can be contrary to what's best for the student. In response to a question about charging parents with trespassing for recording a meeting without permission, the CCHA attorney said it was, quote, "the only thing legally that a school can do to a parent." And later, anything in a policy about a parent violating it is going to say there would be no trespass. So the underlying sentiments were that if we follow the policy and ask for permission, we don't trust the district. Our request to record puts our children's interests at risk. And the actual recommendation was to criminally charge us for not following the policy. If trust is what you want, you can't hire a firm that litigates cases against disabled children to draft a policy more restrictive than state law and current practices. You can't prioritize corporate liability and courtesy to staff over caregiver and child need. You don't give the law firm a seat at the table for the official discussion while you relegate caregivers to asynchronous emails or a 3-minute comment before or after the discussion. I politely emailed you to make sure I would be missing work to attend the correct board meeting because what you told me conflicted with previous meeting minutes, and you said I was, quote, trying to pin you down to a certain time frame. I think the community should be concerned about the explicit bias against caregivers' rights while the board rushes this policy overhaul, forcing us to deliberate numerous policies at once while leaders make statements that minimize the need for more input. We don't want opinion polls. We want people knowledgeable enough about our needs and our rights to be you or invited to sit beside you. Indiana legislators invite both caregiver groups and firms like CCHA to the same table to revise our laws. Such balance in policy writing is just good practice. In closing, I'll tell you that when my child's teacher in her new district read her IEP for the first time, he marveled at it, saying he could tell I had worked really hard to make her IEP so good. Years of struggle, all validated by one comment. He has never required advance notice of my intent to record a meeting, and I've never trusted a teacher more quickly. My child made the honor roll last semester, and she's slated to graduate in the spring. Her efforts and his efforts are paying off, but so are mine. In part because I love my child so much that I recorded her IEP meetings. Thank you. And here are some comments from caregivers who watched the May discussion.
Okay, thank you. Tiffany Lyle, you are up next.
Good evening. My name is Tiffany Lyle, and I'm a parent of a pre-K student and also a third grade student. And I'm here this evening to celebrate the new pre-K program in the West Lafayette schools. I know that this has been a long time planning within our city, within this board, and also within the school. And I know the energy and effort it takes to stand up a program. I just wanted to come here and offer that voice of a parent that's been involved with that program. My child is 4 years old, and so far, just to share her review from her mouth, she actually asked me if she could go back the next day, and that her favorite teacher was Mrs. Johnson. But truly, from my standpoint, just the decision, yes, they've only been there for 4 days, but the decision was certainly mulled over in our household for several months. Just from the sign-up process and communication with Mrs. Delaney and Mrs. Laney, just providing details, really half hour by half hour of what the curriculum was going to be, learning what the activities were going to be just over the summer, and making the decision to leave a daycare center where our child has attended for most of her life was not an easy decision to choose to leave. But we found when we came in those first few days, number one was that our daughter, she knew with the toys they had and the equipment and activities in the room, what to do. It reflected the environment that she had been in and was really going to push her forward. And more importantly for me as a West Side parent, it reflected the excellence which I've learned to expect at our schools. And just in the first few days, and those first few days are just so important. I mean, it's, again, never easy to change, but I mean, I just really wanted to give kudos to the school for really investing in this program. I hope it continues to grow. And most importantly, not only is my child learning, but I know that shifting from a daycare center, they're cared and loved for within. So I just want to truly give thanks to Mrs. Delaney, Mrs. Laney, Mrs. Johnson, and Mrs. Bogan for really, really working hard to make this program strong and to be what it is. So thanks again.
Thank you very much. It's really nice to hear. Okay, we will move forward into the consent agenda. I need a motion, please. Moved by Mrs. Witt, second by Mr. Schott, and all those in favor of approving the consent agenda, please indicate with a raised hand. Okay.
So first I want to make a motion to remove the teacher appreciation grant and permission to apply for and accept annually awarded federal and state grants, because I do have some questions and clarifications.
Okay. Is there a second on the teacher appreciation grant? Seconded by Lawrence, so that is pulled, and then you've moved on the number 4, permission to apply for and accept annually awarded federal and state grants. Is there a second for that? Seconded again by Lawrence. All right, anything else?
Sorry. So my understanding from the work session is we will no longer be voting on G30 because 350 because there's several changes. So does that mean we need to pull the agenda out of the consent agenda, and because it's now being altered? And I don't know.
G350 isn't in the consent agenda.
No. Do we need to remove the agenda out of the consent agenda so that the agenda can be altered?
No, we can still discuss it without voting on it.
Okay.
Okay, anything else?
Yeah, I would like to remove a personnel report. I have some concerns regarding our recruiting practice, so I ask to remove that from the consent agenda. So,
Is there a second? Seconded by Yui. Okay, anything else? All right, then we are going to proceed with the vote on items 1, 2, 5, and 7. All those in favor of passing 1, 2, 5, and 7, please indicate with a raised hand. That's everybody, Mrs. Julian. Let's see. Then we will return to item number 3. Daisha, go ahead.
So I would like to understand the practice for distributing the tag money. And in reviewing our policy, I have a lot of understanding. I know I brought this up a year ago to analyze the policy, and it was voted against to be able to look at the policy. So I just wanted to understand what our practice is, and is it matching the current policy at this point, if that makes sense.
I think it makes sense. So the practice is that the tag grant is followed by the law, which is you differentiate funds by highly effective and effective, and it goes to classroom teachers. And so that's what we do. From there, does that answer that part?
That answers the statewide part,
Okay.
yes. Okay.
And then, would you like to,
Oh, sorry.
so I don't anticipate.
So is the highly effective, if I understand correctly, the state requires this. They're paid 25% more than your effective teachers.
Correct.
That's all state mandated.
Correct.
Up to that point. So the first part of our policy is all state mandated.
Yes.
Okay, and so then the second part, that's our community only, our school district only, about the handling of that.
Do you mean, I don't want to be presumptuous.
No, and you're fine. This wasn't your policy,
Yeah.
so that's why I'm trying to understand practice versus policy.
Yes, absolutely. And I think if I go down a wrong path,
No, you're good.
I'm going by what we discussed last year, if I understand. Do we pay, I think you're getting at, do we pay all employees the stipend?
Yes,
Yeah, and the answer is yes, we do, but it does not come out of the tag grant. So the tag grant is figured.
okay,
And so what the highly effective amount is what your highly effective teachers get.
okay,
And then out of the, I want to say general fund, but the education fund, then the additional to effective teachers, so that we don't differentiate, is paid to every teacher. And then in addition, the district pays support staff and administrators that stipend as well, but it's not out of the tag grant funds.
okay. So if I understand correctly, which I think it says in our policy, right now it says general fund, but you're saying from the education fund, we then take money and all the effective teachers, plus all the certified staff, non-certified staff, administrators, directors, everyone gets the exact same amount that had been given to the highly effective teachers.
That is correct. And I will add, it's minus the superintendent, but yes, that's
Okay.
correct.
Minus you.
Yeah.
So my first question is actually, if I understood our policy does not give it to the effective teachers. What our policy currently says is that the highly effective teacher amount is given to administrators, directors, non-certified staff, but it's not given to the effective teachers, is what the policy currently states. But do we give the effective teachers the same amount?
Yes, but the tag funds, the grant funds are what pay the highly effective teacher
Right.
that amount. And then the effective teacher out of the grant funds, they're paid out of the grant funds. And then the difference is made up through the education fund dollars.
Okay, so they're coming from different spots. I did understand that part. Okay.
Correct.
Okay.
Mrs. Witt, do you have a question?
Thank you for including, Mrs. Austin, thank you for including the current policy in the board packet. It made it easy to look at. So I'm reading the paragraph, and it states, additionally, the school corporation will provide to all effective certified staff an amount from the school corporation's general fund or education fund. We know that language has changed. If funding isn't available, that will result in such staff, so the effective certified staff are such staff, receiving the same amount as received by the highly effective teachers. So that is the language that covers the additional amount that goes to the effective certified staff. And then it goes on to say, if the school corporation will provide to all building level administrators, directors, and non-certified staff rated highly effective or effective, an equal amount given to the certified staff, if funding is available through the corporation's general fund, we know means education fund. So that specifically are the two sentences that are make it appropriate to do what is happening in practice.
Correct.
Okay, so so then you are correct. I was trying to get my brain across all these terminologies. But, so if I understand, if a certified staff, any of the others, if a teacher gets below effective or not highly effective, they don't get anything. But all of our staff are I don't know all the terminology, sorry.
Non-certified staff and so forth.
Non-certified staff, administrators, directors, everybody gets the same amount of money, and I understand from different pots, but everybody gets the same amount of money no matter what as long as they're effective or highly effective.
Effective or highly effective is the
that
key.
correct?
That is correct, yes.
Okay, help me understand, in looking at other school districts' policies, and I know this was part of the conversation, and like I said, I just keep getting more feedback throughout the year, so now I'm trying to grasp it at this stage, it seems like we are the only school district that does this. That we are telling staff, non-certified staff, that we're going to give you a bonus the exact same amount as the teachers, and it's all happening at the same time. Instead of my understanding from talking to other school districts and reading their policies, is they're separate topics. We're taking the tag money and we're giving the teacher appreciation. And then separately, we're addressing how do we give bonuses and pay to others. So I guess my question is, because if I understood from reading it, the old school district that you were at and others don't do it this way. Which way would you prefer it as a superintendent?
When talking with members of the community and teachers, I have heard that that was the greatest thing the previous superintendent and board did, because it focused on unity. And for that reason alone, I support it personally.
Okay, so that's the change in policy from previous school, because at some point we have to update this policy, because this is an old policy.
It's actually updated every year. Not updated, it is presented every year and approved by IDOE. So it will be approved if this board approves it tonight, but you have to approve it annually.
I guess what I mean is it'll become a CCHA policy versus a Neola?
This one is different. This one is different because it is a policy that is required by legally, and so to go before the Department of Education after the board approves it annually.
So will it be given a different number and fall under the system, or how will this be handled, I guess, with our transition? But
We'll give it an
You don't know.
appropriate number. The number doesn't matter. The effect of it will be the same.
Okay.
Find the place where it belongs and we'll put it there.
So if I understand correctly, from hearing back from teachers and the community, everything you've heard, they like this the way it is, that everybody's paid at the same time, equal amounts.
Yeah.
I would tell you I've never heard negative,
Okay.
and I would tell you that I've done enough investigating or listening to people
Okay.
to understand that when the superintendent presented it and the board embraced it, it was a huge morale booster across our district that this board and the superintendent currently, I mean, then, not me, obviously, I don't get credit for this, although I embrace it now, that it was a huge morale booster in that this board recognizes that every person is important, and important at a level. If you're effective or highly effective, you're making a difference in our students, and we appreciate you. Those are my words, but it's what I've gathered. So that's why I'm comfortable with it, is what I'm
Okay.
saying.
I mean, I was a teacher at the time and had heard other things from other teachers,
Okay.
so I understand there's differences, but I
Sure.
was curious what you were hearing and where you're standing.
Yeah.
You have felt like you haven't heard anything against this.
I've never heard anything negative, and I don't want to act like that I've been out marching around looking for it. When there were questions for it, I did some question, and I'm very comfortable with it at this point. So
That's what I want to understand. Thank you.
you're welcome.
I would like to specify that we tried to pay it all at the same time.
Okay.
1 year I was able to, 1 year I was not since I've been here. It just kind of depends on what else is going on at the same time. So
Helpful. Thank you.
Can we change the language to reflect the correct fund in this?
when they say general fund, that's really, in that aspect, it's not capitalized. So it's really like the
general fund.
the general funds.
A small g general?
Yeah.
Okay, so it's fine the way it is.
I'm fine with it that way
comfortable
because it's
with
not
it
a
too,
proper.
Great. Anything else? let's go ahead and, Yui?
Same question. I feel it's quite a counterintuitive, at least it's quite different from the higher education where I come from. And so sounds to me this system then doesn't encourage those who work extremely hard. And I also look at the chart that for the teacher evaluation, which we will discuss later, and actually for those who need improvement, actually is a very small number of people. And so I wonder, in this case, when everybody got the same amount, and by the way, I also support the extra compensation for the staff members who work extremely hard. And so I wonder, in addition to this same amount of incentive reward, and to those who are not either highly effective or effective, get something else, for example, a PD, or to make improvement for the future. And because right now, really, this system doesn't sound rewarding those who work extremely hard.
The teachers who are under improvement needed are on an improvement plan to help them rise to the level of effective or highly effective in the future. Is that what you're asking?
Besides the same amount of reward.
So to clarify, if you are on needs improvement or ineffective, you do not receive the funds. And yes, there are supports in place collaboratively. The evaluation system is less about punitive and more about supports and ongoing feedback. So yes to that question. And then to clarify, if you are ineffective or needs improvement, the teacher does not get the tag dollars.
But they got $1 from a different source.
No, they get no dollars.
Oh, I misunderstood it.
Yes, Rachel.
As I recall, Mrs. Crunk, the amount of money that we're talking about per teachers or per employees is relatively low. Has something changed with that, or what approximate amount do we end up distributing to teachers or to staff?
3,500 is probably. Yeah, $300 to $500.
$300 to $500.
And it could change from year to year, each year, annually. Yeah.
Okay, let's go ahead and vote. All of those in favor of approving the teacher appreciation grants, please indicate with a raised hand. That is everyone, Mrs. Julian. Next up, we have permission to apply for and accept annually awarded federal and state grants.
I don't understand why this is something that we're trying to do. This is new to me, so I just wanted to understand that. It was approved like this last year, and I maybe then missed that in my notes. I apologize.
That we have to do this annually. So we are annually able to accept federal funds, but the board has to accept upfront that they will take those funds, that they will accept those, because those funds will come with stipulations that would say you can't discriminate, you have to use them according to how the federal government dictates, and the same with the state. So basically, when the board agrees to accept these funds, we are stating up front, we want the funds and we agree to the terms of the funds, and we will abide by the terms of those, accepting those funds.
And you maybe don't know the answer to this. Why would this be something the board wouldn't?
I don't know.
Why is this, some of these things make sense to me. This one I was like, I don't know if I'm missing something or.
I can take that one.
It would be speculation on my part to say otherwise. I do know there are some times where states take a stand and say we don't want this because they disagree with, if you disagreed with a portion of it, I don't know. We still are required to follow the federal law, so I don't know why we wouldn't, but it's part of our policy saying that we have to bring it to you to accept the funds.
And government accounting can be burdensome, and it might be more than a small district could handle or a very large district could handle. And I'm not too terribly concerned about what other districts do, because I would like to go ahead and vote on approving the ability to receive those funds. Does anyone else have anything to say? Sure.
So basically, when we talk about the federal grant, there's a lot of procedures, and also it comes with higher standard of auditing things. And sometimes they have come with the conditions, you have to put some money or something, and then they can match or something. So I'm just wondering, when we apply this grant, what is the procedures, and do we consider those kind of situations into these issues?
To the state, and the state creates procedures that have been approved by the federal government. We apply for the money to the state, and then the state sets up procedures that we have to follow. Currently, we're at the stage where we've submitted a pre-application. The pre-application requires quite a lot of information, and then as our pre-application is approved, then we're allowed to apply for the other individual grants that are available at the federal level. And it's pretty well done. It's pretty efficient. There are folks at the IDOE who are trained in this, and if there's something that's not right, they will contact you back and say, we need you to correct this, or we have a question about this. So it's pretty straightforward, but it's just steps and steps and steps to follow.
Yeah, that's what I heard. There's a lot of procedures, and by the end of the year, they also have auditing things. So in terms of dollar amount, how much, we can get from federal?
Well, when we had ESSER and the funds that would have resulted from the pandemic, it was a considerable dollar amount.
Yeah, that's
On an
the
average year,
exception, yeah.
Title I, maybe 250 to 300,000. Title II, 40, 60,000. Title III, 15 to 20,000. Title IV, maybe 20,000.
Yeah, that's my understanding. Federal, something like maybe around less than 1 million, huh?
Yeah, it's a minute portion of what we spend, but we do use those dollars, largely on staff.
Okay. That's all. Thank you,
Rachel.
appreciate it.
I just wanted to clarify, following our speaker this evening was curious, so did go to the board meetings. It is listed. We did vote on this topic at our July 10th regular meeting, and it was clearly listed and described in the August 14th meeting minutes. So it is, I'm excited to say, easily accessible to anybody in our community who'd be interested in finding it.
Great, thank you.
You're most welcome.
In that case, are we ready to take a vote? All those in favor of giving permission to apply for and accept annually, please raise your hand. Great, that's everybody. Mrs. Julian. And now we are going to arrive at the personnel report, and I would like to remind everyone that we do not discuss individual employees or prospective employees in this meeting. That is not a good idea. So with that, Lawrence, I believe this was you.
Yeah, I can submit. You need
Wasn't this you that pulled it?
You need a motion or?
No, I need to know why you pulled this out of the consent
Yeah,
agenda.
basically, I have some concerns regarding our school recruiting practices. So it seems to me, as far as I understand, we don't have written, hiring guidance or manuals. And as far as I know, at least some search hirings, we finished that with very limited candidate pool. And we make the decision, very rush decisions, very quickly decisions. And from what I can tell, the such practice may lead to the perceptions of lack of transparency and accountabilities. The perception doesn't mean that really happened. Maybe we do pretty good, but just give people feel like, we don't have transparencies and also the accountabilities. And this kind of perception may damage the integrities of our hiring process. So that's my concerns. And I think probably, maybe we'll be better off if our school have composed a formal written guidance or manuals of staff hirings, make that book available to everybody, so everybody have the same on the same page, same expectations. Otherwise, some people say, hey, maybe we need to interview 100 people, 100 candidates before make decisions. Some people say maybe 2 candidates enough. So if we have this kind of things, that will maybe help. So I believe such guidance will ensure we have a consistent and fairness of recruitings, and also we can eliminate personal bias. Also, we can create kind of supportive culture, working environment, also culture for our teachers and the staff members, so we can attract and return the best candidate, the high quality talent for our school and also for our student. Thank you.
Rachel, oh, go ahead, Tom, sorry.
What does this have to do with the personnel report? We're approving the hiring of personnel. What does this have to do with these people we're trying to approve tonight?
Oh, yeah, because there's anything on the personnel, they have hirings, there are terminations, they have, not termination, they resigns, they change the jobs, so they need to go through a process. And I think some process, maybe we can make that better.
But we're not approving a process, we're approving the personnel report. I just understand why we're always going back to process when we're trying to approve people's hirings.
Yes, that's people, why we end up with that people, because we go through the process. So if we don't have a good process, probably we won't be able to get the best candidate. So that's kind of justice of procedures. So I think procedure is very important.
I'm not questioning whether it's important, I'm questioning what it has to do with approving the personnel report.
Yes.
How is this?
I have the concern with the procedures because
I understand that.
yeah,
You
the
have those concerns.
yeah.
But how does that affect voting on? Is this going to determine whether you vote yes or no on the personnel report?
Yes, that will affect my decision. My decision based on the more information regarding how we find people, recruit people, find the best people for our school. I mean, when you talk about recruiting, I mean, this is kind of our whole team work. We work together and find.
But we don't work together. Let's get that out of it. And I've said for months, people don't want to come here because of this board. And this is just another classic example.
Okay.
Doesn't matter, you have a 10-page manual on hiring people, but the ineffectiveness and the lack of cohesiveness of this board is why people don't want to come here. That's why we have 2 people apply and not 2,000, or whatever number you want.
Rachel's been very patient. Let's let her talk.
We recruit and hire and manage one person in the school corporation, and that's our superintendent. We as a board, we do not hire teachers, we do not hire paras, we do not hire cafeteria workers, we do not hire principals, we do not hire assistant principals or directors of special education. That is not our role. It has never been our role. And that is not within the scope of what a school board does. So our job in this is to hire a superintendent and hold him to expectations for excellence in our schools for our students and stay focused on student outcomes. Micromanaging how he leads his administrative team in hiring, recruiting, interviewing, vetting, discussing, having lunch with. That is not the scope of the school board. And when we spend time having these conversations about this candidate or that candidate or what we think we might like to have, we're losing sight of the number one thing we're supposed to pay attention to, which is student achievement. And if we cannot count on our superintendent to lead his administrative team to bring our students forward in achievement, then that's our problem, not that. That is not our role. We're outside of our scope in this conversation.
I have a question about something in the administrative report. How many athletic supervisor positions and assistant positions do we have?
Could I first comment?
Oh, yes.
If you don't mind.
No, go back to
May
the
I,
other one.
Mrs. Mumford, and then we'll answer that question happily.
Yes, no, I'm.
Because I've been questioned every employee that I bring to the board for hire on my, I don't know if it's ability, but certainly the procedures. And I would tell you that I'm very proud of the procedures that we have in place, and I stand behind them. And I will tell you that when I bring to you my professional recommendation, the recommendation that you as a board have hired me to do, I bring it confidently, I bring it including staff, I bring it including community, I bring it including students, and I bring it including parents. And I tried to lay out in Friday notes, and if you don't mind, I'd like you to read them, because I feel I feel like the people that I've hired, I'm very proud of their work. And so I just want to say that I don't think we have ineffective hiring practices at all. When you look at our employees, I would say we have very positive ones. We are in a teacher shortage. We are in an administrative shortage, and we still have people wanting to come to our district. And so I very proudly and confidently tell you that my professional recommendation that I give to you, which is aligned to the policy, I'm confident in. And I will hold myself accountable for putting supports in place of those individuals that you approve when you trust my leadership and the professional recommendations that I give to you. But I've had multiple now comments in public meetings that you question my approach to hiring. And so I just wanted to tell you, I will serve this board and this community. This is my community. It's not just that I serve here as superintendent. I live here. I brought my children here. I am not going to make decisions that are careless. I will serve and follow procedures, follow policy, and work hard to bring quality people. And I will uplift them through the support that I expect my team to give our new hires as well as our hires here. I want to assure in public you of that commitment of mine.
I'll go ahead and read the process. Regarding the process for hiring administrators at the central office level, we follow a very similar process each time we hire a certified principal or director position. Consistent job description developed including specific information about the position requirements and salary benefits. Number 2, consistent minimum expectations of experience and license as preferred qualities. Number 3, consistent posting across sites state and or nationwide. Number 4, consistent application process through frontline hiring software. Number 5, consistent inclusion of applicable stakeholder input to inform decisions. Number 6, consistent inclusion of teachers on the committee in addition to other administrators. Number 7, consistent inclusion of parents and family members affected by the position to gain their unique perspectives. And finally, consistent minimum 2-step process with a focus on candidate knowledge and experience in the first interview and candidate fit and in-depth skills demonstration through performance tasks on the second interview. So do you have handy the number of associate directors of, what did you ask about? The sports? Athletics?
My question?
Yeah.
I want to say too, I respectfully address the board with this. I'm doing it with conviction, but I respectfully address the board because I'm concerned that we keep asking it and you're going to question, or the community is going to question, does Dr. Greiner care? I do care. I care about our community. And I'm going to give you my professional recommendation and what I think is best based on the team that works with me, based on committees and based on input. So I'm respectfully giving you this information, but I'm giving it to you confidently and passionately.
Daisha, what was your question again?
So mine's totally separate than this, so.
Okay,
That's
thank you.
good.
I mean,
Would you
sorry.
please email it to me?
No.
And we'll,
No, I meant, I did email ahead of time.
Yes.
He knows, it's just because it's lots in the thing.
Yes.
I just mean, it has nothing to do with this conversation, it's a new topic.
Go
okay,
ahead, please.
Can I just finish the conversation and then we can move on to?
sure.
Yes, yeah, I understand what Dr. Greiner said. I fully respect your expertise and I have no problem with that. And I do support your recommendations. The only things I think we can make that better, just as what Amy read. The procedures, we can make a kind of manuals to distribute the whole district. Everybody know this is the procedures when we hiring people to follow. So make sure everybody on the same page. That's
Well,
pretty
we've
much-
just read them on YouTube, so I think
No, I get
it's out there. And I'm sure it will
No,
be
let me-
repeated.
Okay, let me finish. So basically, that's my suggestion. But again, I'm a board member, I'm layman, so I don't want to cross the line, ask you to do this or do that. I mean, how you do that is totally up to you, but it's just my opinion. And,
Rachel?
And Mrs. Roth, we do have that. We do this each time, correct? Thank you.
I just would like to point out, Lawrence, that you are asking Dr. Greiner to do something that he is already doing, clearly based on his description. And every time you sit in a public meeting and ask him if he is doing the thing that he's already told us that he's doing, it does not feel, the language does not feel respectful of his professional opinion. I am not receiving that as respectful. So just so you have it from one person, at least, that is not the perception.
okay,
You keep bringing up the same points ever since you got on. We described our role very specifically, yet you keep crossing the same line over and over again. This is his job, not our job. We hired him to do this job. You need to have the confidence, faith, and the trust that he's rightfully earned, and let him do his job. That's it.
Can I comment
Yui
something?
would like to speak. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
I think what Lawrence said is about the policy. It's not about the particular hair. Sounds to me. And earlier, Amy, you read a list of consistent this or that. I really appreciate that. But what I think what's not clear is the specific information. For example, and we did many hairs at least during the term when I served on the board. I found some inconsistency, and nothing is bad, but I feel we need to formulate a policy to lay out all these like procedures and make all the consistencies more explicit. And for example, and right now, I feel I'm still confused. For example, what kind of employment should involve school board representatives? You know, some of
None of it. None of it.
Well,
And that comes directly from the
can I
School Board
finish what I said?
Association?
Can I finish?
Sure.
Yeah. And so you say none of them. I'm not going to argue for it, but then it should be on the policy. But, you know, sometimes.
Well, we can't pass policies right now, so.
No. Can I finish? Okay, so my observation is sometimes we are, sometimes we are not. And so it is kind of confusing. And I'm not sure what kind of position should be a position school board representative should serve on, and which ones we shouldn't serve on.
The school board hires the superintendent, period. That's it.
But
And any others that we've been involved in have been as a courtesy.
I can't finish what
Well, I'm trying to answer your question.
But the fact was, for example, when the high school principal was hired, school board members, representatives serve on it.
Yeah,
right?
and
So
that was a mistake, according to the School Board Association.
That's a problem for the policy. If on policy it says, you know, school board members shouldn't serve on this, then okay, we don't serve on it, right? So I'm just saying we don't have a clear policy. That's why it varies. Also, I noticed that sometimes we report the timeline of, for example, when we post the job, or when it's a first round interview and then second round interview, all this information is, and the number of applications, everything is reported and shared at the board meeting, but sometimes they're not. So it's, at least Lawrence mentioned the perception, at least to the public, and people feel, you know, sometimes it's transparent, sometimes it's not. When it's not transparent, people start to guess. And that really make people sometimes lose confidence. I know, and Sean is doing his very best. I totally trust him, but I'm just saying, you know, we have to stand in a different perspective, in others' shoes, to look at this whole process. If we have a very clear policy, for example, all these consistent practice, why don't we write them down, make it clear, for example, between the job post to the first round interview, we should have 1 month window or something like that. We may not have, you know, nowadays with the teacher shortage, we won't have 100 applications, but, you know, things like that. Or who should serve on the committee? Teachers, parents, students, or if many students, teachers, parents apply to serve on it, how do we select who will serve on it? And so, like, whether we should notify the public how this search process was done. And it's very, I'm not saying about every single position, I'm talking about those critical ones, for example, the district-wide level central, for example, assistant superintendent, or special education director, or principal. And, you know, those critical positions, I think it will be helpful to make it more transparent to the public, so people will be more convinced, okay, you did your best. And otherwise, people will have the perception, oh, it's not fair, it's not transparent. There are many guesses. So that's my read.
Do I get to talk now?
Sure.
Great.
Thank you for giving me all the time.
Yep, then Tom. So after the situation, the last time we had a critical hire, as you put it, I consulted with the School Board Association, and I was advised, and Tom and Brad and I discussed it as the board leadership, and we decided together that the board should no longer be involved in hiring decisions because we were making a mess of it, and we were being very unfair to our people in the way we were behaving up here. So that is why we're no longer involved, and we will not be as long as I'm sitting in this seat. So I believe that our administrators are fully capable, more capable than we are, of making excellent hiring decisions. They've proven that over the last 3 years, before that with the principals, and I fully trust them to bring us their recommendation, and it is our job to sign off on it and say, yes, you have done your job. We appreciate that. Here are the people you've hired. That's all we are supposed to do. It is not our job to micromanage that decision. And when we do, and this is what I was told by ISBA, when we do that, we lose our superintendent because none of the professional educators who have risen to that level in their career want to be micromanaged on that level, and they will leave us. And that has been proven out in other situations that I'm aware of throughout the state, where boards have micromanaged and they've lost their superintendent. And I don't want that to happen. So as long as I'm here, I'm going to keep us in our role, which is to hire the superintendent and supervise him, set policy and approve expenditures. And we are not going to stray from those boundaries until I have faith that the people I'm working with are trustworthy in those positions. Then maybe we'll start with more committees like we used to have. But right now, I just don't feel like we're doing a good job at the minimum amount of school boarding we're doing. So I don't think we need to expand to the maximum amount. And that is why it changed. Tom, what would you like to share?
Since it's kind of turned into a free-for-all, I just want to share that I got multiple reports over the weekend from the community, teachers, non-teachers, that our new junior senior high school principal's doing a great job.
I did too.
And thanked me for that. I immediately said, the thanks goes to Dr. Greiner. So
Absolutely.
you have our thanks, or at least you have my thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Schwab.
Okay, we're going to move on to the vote. Is this about the vote on the personnel report? Yes or no?
I just want to clarify.
Vote or not about the vote?
I just want to clarify.
Nope. We're going to vote now.
Okay.
All those in favor of approving the personnel report, please indicate with a raised hand. That is everyone, Mrs. Julian. And we can have all the conversations you want after the meeting, sir. All right. Yes, ma'am.
But Daisha did have the question about the athletic piece that I think she's been very patient to wait, and I'm interested to know what the question is. So
Okay.
could we backtrack to that? I don't know what the
We can take a moment to entertain that question. What was it
protocol is.
again?
So it was just, we have a number of assistant athletic supervisor positions, and so I was just wondering, how many positions do we have filled this year compared to last year? Or is this a new, do we have new ones? I'm just understanding with that.
Understood. I can see, I understand your question too when I look. So we had it's 3 positions.
Okay,
And we had 2.66 filled last year.
okay,
And this year we have 3 filled again. But for 2 of those positions, there are multiple individuals
okay.
with that stipend divided out.
So we had an empty spot last year.
Correct.
technically, Not
Yes.
filled. We're not creating something.
That's
new
correct.
This year. And then we did lose the assistant athletic director. Is that something that we are still going to be hiring? Is that something where are we at on that position in the athletic department, or do you know?
I do, and it is a position where through periods, I'm gonna make sure, okay, he's nodding his head. So if not feel free to, this one you can interject. Mr. Fry has 2 periods freed up to address those jobs. So it's not a job in that there's not additional funding or anything like that. It's duties tied to that, and Mr. Fry is assuming those responsibilities.
So in addition to his, or is that part of it that it shows here he's doing a third of the time, he's doing that plus this other thing, or is that what you're meaning?
It's a full-time teacher. And
Yes.
instead of, he teaches so many periods, and
Yes.
then for a couple other periods, he helps out and directs.
Now I understand.
So no matter what he's doing the same.
It's the contract teacher contract, not the assistant athletic director position contract, is the way that he's able to help
I'm
balance.
not aware of any assistant AD contract, so.
Perfect.
That makes sense.
Totally. Thank you.
If I'm wrong,
And I meant to say responsibilities if I didn't say that, so
No,
I
you did a great job.
apologize.
I was
Okay,
just trying to understand how this worked compared to the past. So
Thank you.
That was my question.
Okay, we are going to take this out of order because one of them is going to be easy. Item number 9, G350, audio, video, and digital recording. During the work session, we discussed tabling that in order to be able to consult with our staff on the wording that we've arrived at. So I need a motion to table, please. Moved by Dacia, seconded by Lawrence. All those in favor of tabling G350, please raise your hand. That means we're just going to vote next month. That's all. G350. Okay, great. That's everybody. Cool. I would rather wait and do that during work session. Then we'll talk about it during the work session. Then please email them to me. Okay. C375, which is suspension and expulsion of students. The disagreement we are having is whether or not the board will hear those appeals. In the Church, Hiddle, and Antrim version of C375, we do not. That goes to the courts. In the amended version of C375, we hear those. So I'm going to call for a vote on the Church, Hiddle, and Antrim version where we do not hear those first. And then if that does not pass, we will hear a vote on the other. And as always, you can say yes, no, or abstain, but nowhere did I find in Robert's rules that you can vote either or. So all those in favor? Oh yeah, I need a motion to approve. Thank you, from Tom and Brad. Sure.
I would like board members to share, so you said the first one we're voting on is to not hear appeals?
Correct.
So I would like to hear from board members why they do not want to hear appeals from parents.
Rachel?
That was discussed in great detail in our work session that was recorded and available over the fantastic internet. So I don't find that to be effective use of our time in a board meeting.
So the purpose of a regular meeting is the official record is a regular meeting, a work session's a discussion. And so comments for the official record, you know, this is typical actually the way work sessions and regular meetings work is you can re-ask the same questions so that now the community and official record here. So I would like to hear, I mean, and I can share what I understood, but I don't want to.
Right.
I prefer you not.
Yeah, I'm just saying that I don't find it to be effective use of our time to do that. It's been discussed. We've already spent more than 30 minutes on it in a work session that was held immediately prior to this. And this would be, I think, the third meeting that this particular policy has come to in some form or fashion. So if that's what everybody would like to do, I'm fine with it. I just am asking you as board chair to consider that we would just proceed with the vote given the amount that we've already talked about this one.
Okay. Would anyone like to share their rationale for voting either way? Okay.
So again, this falls under the purview of our school administrators and our teachers. And I think the first thing that we have to consider is they do their job, they honor their responsibility, And I would suggest they do everything humanly possible to not suspend a student or to not expel a student. So they're giving counsel. There's a lot of things that go on behind the curtain that we are totally unaware of, okay? We are not going to sit in on this as a grand jury. We're not in the buildings. We don't have the evidence. We're not in position to make a ruling on a recommendation that's brought forward by our school administrators. That's not our role. It's their role. And so if we were to sit and say, well, let's listen to this appeal, and what if we overrule that appeal? Then what we've done is we've undermined the confidence of our administrators and staff, and we've unseated that. We've said, you know what, you don't know enough to make that decision, so we're going to make it for you. It's not our role, it's not our responsibility, it's theirs. And they have firsthand experience. We do not. And if the parent or guardian wants to take it to a higher level, they can do that. But it's not going to be the school board. You talk to any administrator about this particular policy, they're not interested in us being a sounding board. You talk to other people that, I know board members from other school corporations too, Daisha, and they don't do it. They don't hear appeals. So I think we're on firm ground here as to not hear the appeals. Let due process take its course, instill confidence in our administrators, faculty, and we go with that.
Thank you. Go ahead.
I'll share that, just to clarify, there are school boards that don't hear appeals, but there are school boards that do.
Sure.
It's in everybody's policies. I find, we just have different views. That's why we will be voting and the majority will make the decision. When I see this, that a board gets to be appealed to, it's nothing to do with undermining or not respecting our administration. It's allowing our community to be heard by members that they have voted on before they're having to pay fees to go to the courts. And so to me, that's what it's just double checking. I don't see it as, I would hope if we find something and shared with Dr. Greiner a concern that he doesn't take offense. I've shared concerns with him. He's been very respectful and addressed them. And that's how I see this appeal process. So to me, the biggest thing as we've collected information over the last little while is it's the cost. If a family comes forward and disagrees with an expulsion, we are saying you are required to spend money and take it to the courts to appeal it, instead of giving them one more option to have a community hear that. And so that is why I am in support of allowing the school board to listen to appeals.
Dr. Greiner, you've been a superintendent for 13 years.
Yes.
How many times has expulsion hearing come up in your experience? Whether it was by the courts or by the...
Maybe 3 or 4, as far as going to an actual hearing of an assigned administrator.
And were any of those here?
No.
Okay, thanks. All right, all those in favor of... Oh my goodness. Hi, Lawrence.
Yeah, I want to share because I prefer we hear the appeals. So there's some considerations. I totally agree with Dr. Greiner, and very likely when we hear the appeal, we will agree with what our administration decision. But I think, as board member, I still believe collective intelligence. So if we work together, maybe we can make better decisions. That's one consideration. Another thing is, some students, families, if they have some appeal, they go court, they need the financial means to do that. And also we school also have spend money to work with them on the court. So I don't think that's the best way to use our educational fund. So giving those informations, I think probably we want to hear that, and then we keep if we can handle that, we can solve the issues within our corporation, it will be better than go outside. It's also protect our schools' reputations.
Okay. You know who else gets elected? Judges.
What?
judges also get elected. But anyway, okay, we're going to move on to the vote. All those in favor of passing the Churchill, and Antrim version where we do not hear appeals, please raise your hands. All those opposed? That passes 4-3, Mrs. Julian.
Can I make a clarification?
Sure.
We have had a couple of expulsion hearings. So I didn't want to miscommunicate that.
Okay.
I'm not aware that any have gone to court, but we've had a couple of expulsion hearings where we've been assigned an administrator, if that was your question. So I don't want to misspeak.
Nope, that's good. Thank you. All right, we are going to move on to the, hold on. Right, okay, sorry, I had to make sure. We are going to move on to new business, and Dr. Greiner, the administrator and teacher evaluation presentation, please.
Great, and so we will start with the teacher evaluation presentation. We're not provided a slideshow. That's true. I can do, I'd rather do that anyway. Thank you. Does it take a while? There we go. Perfect. I'm just going to do it the same way, right? Right. Wait to go this way.
It's the seventh inning stretch. I've got my M&Ms.
There it goes.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Mrs. Kronk, do you want to talk real fast about the phones, and then we can come back to this?
I could.
Yeah, let's do that. Let's move on to number 11, phone system upgrade, and then we'll come back to number 10.
Okay. As part of the 2024 budgeting process, the IT department requested the replacement of the corporation-wide telephone system as our current hardware is nearing its end of life. It is difficult to replace and repair. Replacement was included on the 24 to 26 capital plan during that budgeting process. Mr. Hamilton worked diligently to obtain 3 different quotes for Cisco hardware from Wintech, CDWG, and Summit 360. Wintech Business Solutions provided the lowest quote for hardware in the amount of $69,671.10, including the hardware, SmartNet licensing, and maintenance. The cost will be paid from the education and operation funds, depending upon the location of the phones. Mr. Hamilton is also requesting approval of the 5-year licensing agreement to go along with the phones as they will operate on the cloud. The 5-year total is $112,813, or approximately $22,562 annually for the operation of those. This cost will be paid from the operations fund. Please approve the replacement of the phone hardware and the 5-year licensing agreement as submitted, please.
Okay, I need a motion. Moved by
second.
Ms. Rachel, seconded by who?
I can say.
Lawrence, okay, great. Any comments about phones? Rachel?
I just have a question on timing. When would this likely be implemented?
I am not sure, and Brandon is not here today to ask that question. I would assume probably fairly quickly. Do you know, Eric?
I know we've already done the trials of the devices. I think it's dependent on Wintech's supply.
Yeah.
And are they
It's
able?
supply chain management.
Yeah, are they able to work around school and session times?
I
that
will
type
tell
of
you,
thing?
I've been through one of these before, and they do a really good job of doing that. So, yeah.
Thank you.
We're going to hold you to that.
Anything else?
Okay, you can hold me to that. I will apologize if it doesn't.
Okay, all those in favor of upgrading the phones, please raise your hands. That's everybody, Mrs. Julian. And now we will return to number 10, which is the administrator and teacher evaluation
Yes.
presentation.
Thank you very much. And I'm going to do this combined. the teacher evaluation presentation, then I'll go right into the administrative evaluation presentation, and then I'm happy to entertain questions. This is a requirement that we present the teacher evaluation plan each year to the board, and so we like to do that in August. And then it's also required that we hold a hearing or publicly share the teacher evaluation ratings. And so that is what you will hear today, as you've heard in previous years. The teacher evaluation plan is the same. There have not been changes, but it is presented to the Indiana Department of Education each year for approval. And it is a locally approved professional teacher summative evaluation, and 100% of the teacher rating is taken from this teacher evaluation plan. It is, as required by law, a 4-point rating scale, with 1 being the lowest or ineffective, all the way up to 4 highly effective. Professional teacher summative evaluation has 4 domains. And you can see it's instructional leadership, professionalism, effective instruction, and student assessment. And you can see that effective instruction is the most weighted of the 4 domains. A final summative score is given based on the locally approved professional teacher summative evaluation. And the final summative score is based on professional judgment after a minimum of 2 observations by the evaluator. Here you see the scores or the ratings of our teachers from 2023 to 2024 school year. If you look at the bottom, you can see we evaluated 159 teachers. 146 were rated highly effective, 12 were effective, and 1 improvement necessary. Next, I would like to share with, of course.
Pause there. I think it's an important juncture. So I am the board representative on board teacher discussion.
Okay.
And I just really want to pause there and really applaud the WLEA discussion team. Because this issue of teacher effectiveness and evaluation is something that they bring very, very regularly. Clear communication, ask for great updates, great professionalism and advocacy for teachers in our school corporation. And I think it's important when we look at those results to also recognize the collaborative nature of the process of teacher evaluation between administrators and our teachers and their participation in it. I've been very impressed by that and have gotten to see regular updates on it in my board teacher discussion.
And since you bring that up, Mrs. Witt, it is collaborative indeed, and it is discussed each year. We've already discussed it in May, and we will take it to discussion again just because we'll discuss the evaluation rating results at our next discussion meeting. But it also is important to note that the evaluation tool is used as a support system to administrator and teacher working together to grow and learn together. And so I think that's important. It's not meant to be punitive, it's meant to be supportive to ensure that we're ever growing professionally. So the administrative evaluation, again, that is a locally developed evaluation. It too, as required, is a 4-point rating scale. And you can see that it is the same with the lowest being ineffective and then a 4 being highly effective. This one is based on the standards for building level administrators from Indiana Department of Education. Indicator 1 of 6, human capital, instructional leadership, leading indicators of student learning, professional behavior, building relationships, and culture of achievement. That again is based on a rubric, a lot similar to the teacher evaluation. The final summative score, administrator evaluation instrument, the administrator self-evaluation. So each administrator self-evaluates, the supervisor evaluates, and then a final score is determined. You can see this past year, we evaluated 9 administrators, 5 were highly effective. 4 were effective. There were none in improvement necessary or ineffective. And with that, I invite questions. Mrs., oh, do you want to?
Go ahead, Rachel.
With regard to the administrative summative evaluation, those different indicators, it's been kind of a topic of conversation tonight, but is it fair to assume that an equitable and legal recruitment and hiring process would be under indicator number 1 of human capital?
Yes.
So when you're assessing your administrators specifically on how they recruit and conduct hires and interviews and that process and make their selections, that would be the area in which you would be evaluating them.
Correct.
Thank you.
Anything else? Yui?
Teacher evaluation, and who are the evaluators? School principals?
School principals and assistant principals, yes.
Okay, and I noticed that the first one dimension is student feedback and assessment. I wonder how is that evaluated?
Student evaluation and feedback.
Right, for the teacher one?
So the kind of feedback that a teacher gives a student to help them grow and or
Okay, I see. So
assessment
it's
of-
not a solicited student feedback about the teacher.
Correct.
And
That's
yeah,
correct.
I think I mentioned this earlier
Yes.
last year before.
Yes, you have.
And about the high schools for younger kids, and
Sure.
I understand it's difficult, but I wonder by any chance we can in the future solicit students' feedback or parents' feedback.
For the evaluation of a teacher, student feedback is not solicited.
I mean, in the future,
That would not be something that-
These 4 dimensions are determined by the Indiana law, or it's our own rubric?
Correct. No, we have not expressed interest in soliciting feedback from students to evaluate a teacher. Some teachers do give, like for a end of course assessment, they might evaluate and use that information themselves, but they would choose to do that.
Yeah, I always feel it's helpful to, even if the school district doesn't collect that information, if a teacher can provide
Yes.
feedback survey to students and ask for feedback, it would be helpful. And because I feel, the students will know the effectiveness, effective instruction and many other things, they will know at least from some perspective. And
In some cases, so I have supported aspiring principals and I get an evaluation. And there are sometimes outliers where they didn't necessarily follow through with their duties. And you can see,
I
so in
understand.
some ways, yes, but, and then when the younger you go, as you
Right,
know.
yes, I totally agree. I'm a teacher myself. Every semester I receive feedback from my students, and and I have mostly high scores, but always some students are unhappy, and I will still read their feedback to see whether there's anything I can learn from them. And
Yes.
so I appreciate those feedback, and so that's why I feel it's important to solicit feedback from them as well. Similarly, for the administrator evaluation, and I assume then, yeah, actually it says, right, you are the evaluator of them, the administrators.
I may be, or
Anna.
yeah.
Okay, so I feel for that one too, because I do measurement as my job, and so we have term called informant, means who provided that data. So in that sense, and for the administrator, for teacher ones, I feel, in addition to the principal's perspective, it would be helpful to have parents and the students' perspective as well. Then for the administrator ones, I feel in addition to the boss, the superintendent or assistant superintendent, it would be helpful to have teachers' perspective, because, principals lead teachers and staff members, and how do they feel about their leader and even students, maybe to some degree, or parents. And so they will have some, it'll be nice to have, for them to have some say as well. To give you an example, and just recently, I heard so many great feedback from parents I know, kind of like friends, about high school, our new high school principal. And they are very happy about the change he already made in the school. And so probably they also will share that information with you, but this is kind of, voluntary. If there's a systematic way for people to share their feedback about administrators, I think it would be very helpful for us to have a full picture about this evaluation. Otherwise, sometimes people, what you see and what parents and students, teachers see might be different. And so just
Absolutely. So it is not a part of the evaluation system. So for administrators, similar to teachers, the parents are not solicited through a survey to help evaluate. And the same is true with the teachers. That being stated, I will tell you that some administrators, I don't know if any of ours do here, but I know that some administrators choose to do that and they use that information for themselves. I'll give you an example. My wife's administrator chooses to do that. Nobody sees that except the administrator, but he's choosing to do that. So we would certainly support if an administrator wanted to do that to get a perspective, but as far as it being a part of the evaluation system, it's not.
Well, I wonder why do we intentionally avoid doing that? For example, for the administrator evaluation, why don't we solicit feedback from teachers, staff members to see whether he or she is a great leader, an effective leader, and what she or he can improve in the future?
I don't know if we intentionally avoid it, so I'm not sure that would be, I wouldn't say we intentionally avoid it. I would state that it's not a part of our evaluation system.
Rachel? Sure.
Dr. Reiner, I would have serious concern for morale and retention of our administrators and teachers were you to allow people who might have firsthand experience with the teacher, but is very influenced by perhaps their grade, their level of maturity, depending on their age, their future aspirations, their understanding of academic integrity issues. I just do not think it is reasonable in any way, shape, or form to compare a K through 12 learning environment to a post-secondary learning environment. They're just not the same. And I would have grave concern were you to mandate that any of our teachers or administrators be, rate my professored by their students.
In the same way that we don't anonymously evaluate a teacher, we would encourage teachers to engage in conversation collaboratively with the administrator. That collaborative approach in the same way that when the administrator is evaluating the teacher, there's a very collaborative, supportive approach. And so if it became evaluative, I would suggest that could feel very threatening. If an administrator wants to solicit it and they want to use that for their own growth. And that's why I think in the example that I gave with my wife and her administrator, it's not evaluative in a way, he is truly using that to gather information in a very non-threatening way. When it becomes evaluative, it's now, there's a threat there to a degree. And so I would encourage dialogue among teachers and administrator to grow. Another thing that we're looking at is a building survey that we want to run past the administrators that the administrators can use. But it's not going to be evaluative. It's going to be information they can use to further develop the building. And some of you I've had conversation with about that. But it's not a point to become evaluative and an I gotcha situation. It's to build and support. Because I can tell you we've got great administrators and we've got great teachers in this district, and we should feel very proud of that.
Tom, what you got?
Totally agree with what Rachel said. Did you say you had friends tell you that they were happy with the new principal?
Yes.
Do you feel at all silly that you didn't vote to hire him?
No.
Okay.
because we, again, when we voted no, we talked about the process.
But the vote was not about the process. The vote was.
Yes,
for the-
so when the process is right, people are more likely to be convinced. That's why I insist that even at that time, I didn't say that I was against the.
But the official minutes that you voted against hiring.
Yes,
Okay, let's move on. Thank you.
No.
Number 12, Mrs. Cronk, talk to me about, oh, hi.
Just a quick question. Just a quick question. Yeah, I appreciate Dr. Grenner add this administrator's evaluation also into this presentation. There's a question regarding the indicator 5, building relationship. Would you mind to elaborate a little bit regarding that item? What kind of things you consider it when you evaluate? I think it's number 5. Indicator 5, yeah.
So building relationships with families, with students, with teachers, being present, being engaged in meetings, working with teachers, those kind of relationships, partnerships that help to develop effective learning in a safe learning environment.
Okay, thank you.
You're
Great.
welcome.
Mrs. Cronk, talk to me about the athletic complex running track replacement, please. It is. Go.
We recently determined that the running track at the athletics complex needs to be resurfaced sooner rather than later, as it can no longer be repaired sufficiently. The project was included on both the 10-year capital improvement study as well as the 2024 budget capital projects plan. We approached Helix Construction, a national sports facility and athletic surface company that was awarded a national contract through the Sourcewell Purchasing Cooperative, a cooperative that has become popular over the past several years in the state of Indiana. Sourcewell, as a purchasing cooperative, completed the RFP for athletic facility surfaces that meets the purchasing requirements for the state of Indiana. Their documents are available on their website for all contracts awarded. I did give you the URL in the memo. I am sorry that the link did not work. I apologize for that. Speaking with the school that recently used Helix to replace their track, they were extremely happy with their services. An extremely competitive bid was submitted, the base amount of $319,300 plus an additional alternative of $45,600 for an upgraded impermeable system. Try saying that fast at night when you're tired, for a total cost of $364,900. They're also able to work with us to replace the track this fall rather than having to wait until next year or even 2 years out like some other ones that we talked to. I recommend using the Helix contract through the Sourcewell Purchasing Cooperative for the track's resurfacing at the athletics complex. The project will be paid for with operations funds. Please approve as submitted.
I need a motion, please. Moved by Lawrence, seconded by Rachel. Anyone have any comments about the track? Great. All those in favor, please raise your hands. That is everybody, Mrs. Julian. Thank you. And one more time, the finance update.
An object breakdown is included in your board packets for expenses during the period of July 11th through August 7th. I've included 2 fund reports again for you this month. The first is the month-end final fund report for June, after all revenue and expenses have posted and the bank has been reconciled, and so that completes our fiscal year. The school corporation ended the month of June with $24,293,247.58 in all funds and $5,268,364.43 in the education fund. I've also included the preliminary fund report for July. It's preliminary as we're still in the process of reconciling that month. What we've been up to over the summer, we filed the January to June 2024 Form 9 financial reports with the state last month. We will soon be filing the State Board of Accounts annual financial report, as well as finalizing the budget for the workshop planned at the September board meeting. As you know, this is one of our busiest times of year, and I would like to extend my appreciation to all of our staff that help make things run smoothly, and as well as make the beginning of the year quite successful.
Great, thank you. And that was informational only, so I don't need any motions. Daisha, go ahead.
I actually would like to make a motion to share publicly the transaction history for each of the construction accounts before the work session on the GO bonds.
Is that information that's in box somewhere that?
No, it's information I've been asking since before I was elected and during I've been elected and been denied, but I would like that information publicly shared before the work session on the GO bonds. So that's my motion.
Is that information that's even available at this point?
I'd have to go back and pull a bunch of statements from the old construction accounts.
Okay, and would that be a burdensome project, or would that be like a 5-minute thing that you could?
It'd take a while.
It would take a while. Okay. Mrs. Mumford has moved to, I'm sorry, can you repeat the request specifically?
I'm making a motion to share publicly the transaction history for each of the construction accounts beginning in 2017 before the work session on the GO bonds. GO bond.
Okay. As information regarding that, all of the years up until 2023 have been audited and passed, correct? And everything is copacetic with the financial transactions as far as the state's concerned. All right, all those, no, we need a second, please. Okay, seconded by Lawrence. All those in favor of publicly sharing the transaction history from 2017 to the present for the construction funds, please raise your hands. All those opposed? That is 3-4, and it does not pass. However, Mrs. Mumford, if there is something specific that you are looking for, perhaps we can come to some agreement over email on what that would be. But for now, let's move on to information to the board. Dr. Greiner.
I just want to start off by talking about our school opening. We're off to a very positive start to a new school year. We kicked off with our typical opening meeting with staff on Tuesday of last week, and I really wanted to take this opportunity to thank those of you board members that were able to attend with us. I think it's important for us, one, to show our appreciation to you, but two, that you're able to see and celebrate an opening of a new year with us. So thank you. We know you're all busy, and we appreciate your attendance at our opening meeting. I'd also like to thank our staff and our students and our families for their part in making this start to a new year so smooth and quite frankly, exciting. I'd like to also share information about transfers and HB 1380. A board member had requested that I share this, and so I just wanted to share that HB 30 is a bill that prohibits school districts from charging transfer tuition starting July 1. We had questions from board members on how does this impact our agreement with TSC. One thing I want to point out is that our district does not bill families in our current agreement with TSC. Currently, we allow students from TSC to attend our schools with permission from Superintendent Dr. Handback under the understanding that it is, quote unquote, better accommodated circumstances. Families complete an application and then Superintendent Handback approves on a student-by-student basis. From there, our principals review the applications and they approve based on space within our buildings or classrooms, attendance records and or behavior records. And that being stated, TSC does charge families based on what we charge TSC and costs. When factoring in our total expense per student compared to the cost of TSC, that is how that's determined. And then that is all addressed at TSC, not with West Lafayette. As long as this process is deemed acceptable by Dr. Handback's attorney, which he is very comfortable with it based on information he's gotten from the attorney, we are comfortable with continuing the current relationship with TSC.
Great.
Also, enrollment numbers. We continue to monitor beginning of the year enrollment numbers. Initially, I can tell you that our kindergarten numbers are down from previous years. This appears to be a trend, at least within our county, after speaking with Superintendents Mr. Huddle and Dr. Handback. That being stated, it is not uncommon to get a few more students once Purdue starts and TSC starts, and TSC and Purdue both start back this week. Based on the number, though, that we are seeing, I think we're going to be down in numbers as Dr. Handback and Mr. Huddle feel they're seeing as well. We'll continue to monitor and we'll update the board accordingly once we have more solid numbers to report to the board before ADM or count day. Our new central office has been relocated, as you're aware, to 3061 Benton Street. It's right behind the elementary school. We look forward to board meetings being held in our new location once everything is in place, and we anticipate moving our meetings from here at Happy Hollow to our new office either in October or November. Strategic planning. Our central office team met with Adam Jones in July. We will begin with survey by surveying all stakeholders. We're going to develop that survey with the support of facilitator Mr. Adam Jones as he works with our central office leaders and principals initially in August. From there, Mr. Jones wants to present to the board for feedback from the board regarding the development of that survey before administering it to stakeholders within the school community. And that concludes my report.
Great, thank you. Go ahead.
Yes.
So thank you for sharing about the new legislation, and I apologize if I missed it at the beginning. Why is it that we can charge transfer tuition when it says you can't? I mean,
So we don't.
share that.
Yes, and good question.
Sure.
We don't charge, and we are charging the school and not parents, and then the school is charging the families based on,
So the difference was school corporations that were charging directly to families, that's what legislation has said is not allowed. But because we charge directly to TSC, it won't change anything that we do.
It will not change anything at this time. If that changes, then we need to kind of start talking about what would our transfer policy look like with, exactly.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Sure.
We charge the parents a difference, right? The difference between the ADM, the TSC.
We charge TSC the difference, and then TSC.
Charge the parents a
Yes.
difference?
Yes.
Oh, okay, I see. So the parents pay TSC the difference?
Correct. Because TSC is paying us, and it's under the condition that the application says, I lost it, I'm sorry. Better, where is it? Help me out, guys. What is it? Better accommodated, yes, better accommodated education.
Okay, so we will continue the old practice?
Yes, we will continue
Under the
that
new law.
practice at this time.
Okay, thanks.
You're welcome. Mr. Wong?
Just to make sure I understand. So basically, this new legislation doesn't, we don't have any impact from our practice regarding the transfer student.
At this time, Dr. Handback is comfortable moving forward with the current agreement. That's correct. At this time, if that would change, then we would need to talk about what would our transfer policy,
Then-
how would that look?
That makes sense. Another thing, would you mind to update the pre-K classroom this year? Anything updates? How about enrollment, that kind of thing?
Well, I was very happy to hear Mrs. Lyle report out. It sounds like it's going very well.
Okay.
And we have 13 or 12 students at this time.
13.
12 or 13? 13. 12. Okay, we have 12 students at this time, and I think we're hearing some pretty positive results from teachers and families.
So far, so good, huh?
Yeah.
There was a recent article on the Indy Star that said that parents at Purdue were paying more
Yeah.
for preschool tuition than they were for college student tuition.
That's right.
And those college students are not, the preschoolers are not coming out coding and engineering. So I think once word gets out and we've had a year of proving the program, it's going to be really, really popular, and we may find ourselves building things, which should be exciting. There's nowhere to go. Okay. Anything else? Cool. All right, so I've been in frequent contact with Representative Campbell about our diploma requirements changing in Indiana, and she agrees with me and shares my concerns, and I just lost my notes. She had an event over the weekend at Fresh Time where there were speakers. Unfortunately, I was unable to attend, but Rachel did. Go ahead.
My thanks to Representative Campbell for putting it together. It was a really good opportunity to hear from teachers from the local schools, and also to hear from Representative I'm sorry, I'm just going to butcher your name over and over again today. To hear from Chris Campbell about what's happening with that and where things stand. A really excellent document that they've put together that kind of explains the differences. I know that we all heard Purdue President Mung Chiang talk about how graduates under these diploma formats would not be eligible for admission to Purdue, which I think is a really important piece of information for our community. Specifically, the concerns, and there are many, but the concerns involve a lack of understanding of what financial structure would happen, how this program would be funded, a lack of opportunity for students who are interested in enrollment and post-secondary opportunity. There is a lack of a capacity for the enlistment option, so there's really not spots available. A lot of concerns about student safety, children being put in work environments that are not appropriate for them developmentally and skills-based. A lot of concern about rural communities and how this might impact them in general. A lot of bad or incomplete information about what students need. So a lot of really kind of passion around that. The first deadline for feedback has already passed, but the Board of Education was meeting today. Did they meet today? Wednesday, they're meeting. I have here at my station a QR code. I'll leave it out on the table after the meeting. This would be today and tomorrow an excellent opportunity to send individual emails to each member of the state board expressing your concerns. Please don't send a bulk email to all, it will get spammed, but you'll want to send individual language to them. In terms of the work of a board, a school corporation, and a school board, this is actually completely in our wheelhouse and an appropriate and important role that we play in helping to guide what opportunities we have. If the state follows through with this and we only have these two diploma formats, understand that those are the only two diploma formats that our students will have the ability to pursue, which means that 0% of our students would be eligible to attend any state university in Indiana or any Ivy, as many of them aspire to do. So I can't express to you thoroughly enough how important that this topic is. And I'm not quite giving it the justice, but as I said, I brought this with me and you're welcome to review it after. But this one is a hot topic. I think everybody's anticipating there's going to be a follow-up plan to this that emerges. But the state is required by legislation to make a decision on this by December board meeting. So mid-December, they have to vote to do something. And if we don't coalesce around this issue and speak up now, it is quite likely that that something will not be something that will fit for our students and our community. So really feel like it's an important one.
Can I make a comment too? Because this is such an important topic. May I?
Of course.
Okay. The most alarming thing for me, and I know my team, was when Dr. Chang's message came out that students wouldn't be prepared to go into college under the diploma. And when you think about equality, and a quality education that allows students to aspire and do whatever they want post-graduation, we want students to graduate with a diploma that allows them to have the ability to do any of those three things. Enlist in the military, go directly to the workforce, or go right on to college. Not decide something in 7th grade and go down a path that they regret later. And that's what is alarming to me, was when we hear individuals like Dr. Chakes write a letter stating that students won't be eligible for college under one diploma versus another. That scares me and it worries me for our students. Let alone the courses that we're peeling away to make a well-rounded student, whether it's the arts, foreign language, political, right? courses on how to make sound decisions. I hope we all speak up. I know some of us have attended ISBA meetings so that they could speak for us. Some of us have actually met, and Representative Campbell helped set this one up. We met with Dr. Jenner to express our concerns, and we felt like through dialogue we were hearing, oh, no, those won't be concerns. And I don't think that was intentional, by the way, of misleading. I don't think it was meant to be misleading. It's exactly what you said. We've got to go, they got a deadline, right? But it just scares me. When you think about all the different school districts in our state, and that we want our students to graduate with the ability to go on and aspire to do what they want to do. And will all of our students have that option if in 7th grade they go a certain direction? That scares me.
Well, and I want to piggyback on that and say, I don't think anybody's doubting that there is a need for a little bit more emphasis or opportunity for students who want to go directly into the workforce, and that's their aspiration. So it's not saying that all of our students need to go to college to be worthy or acceptable or successful. That is not the statement here, but this is eliminating an option, a choice for a big section of our student population. Yeah.
Agreed with you. And it's the point of, I'm so glad you clarified that, it's the point of having the ability as a student, as a graduate, to make that decision.
Yes.
At any time, at any given time.
Yeah, education should open doors, not close them, in my opinion. Yes, Yui.
Discussion, I actually submit a feedback to their forum before their deadline against this. But I wonder, I feel that probably won't help much. And I wonder whether as a whole board, should we do something all together and present it to somebody to make it more powerful?
That's a good question. We will discuss that and see what our options are, because it seems like we all agree, which is amazing. I love that about us. Okay. Do you have anything else?
That's all. And
Do you have
I
anything
just
else,
wanted to piggyback on.
Not on that topic. I have other report items. But
Okay, well,
I'll wait my turn.
okay, Tom, go ahead.
WLCSC, Doug Masson has resigned as president. At the August meeting, Brad Cohen was elected president, Patrick Jones vice president. Sue Lassiter will continue as treasurer, and Mary Beth Whitman as secretary. That's all I've got.
Great. Brad?
We had redevelopment commission meeting July 17th, 2024, 8:30 a.m. Highlights included quote acceptance, Sagamore Parkway Trail, solar lighting. We're going to put some lights on that trail so you can get from Soldiers Home Road down the Wabash River real early in the morning or late at night. It's $132,000 for solar lights, but we'll get that'll get a nice return because of the solar energy source. Next up, Public Safety Center Phase 2. We're going into architecture and engineering services. We approved a contract for just over $2 million. That's just the tip of the iceberg because that new public safety center is estimated to cost $60 million. We serviced by TIF bond issuance, of which we have 6 TIF districts now, which are actually pretty lucrative for the city of West Lafayette and also for our general fund referendum. Next up is the landmark project, which is going down in the levee. I've told you all about this before, but we have formally approved the $5.5 million issuance of a TIF bond that's going to be serviced by the increment taxes off of that area. By the way, this is 1,300 beds, and it's a $250 million project that's going in the levee. So if you want to go visit the campus inn one more time, you better hurry. Wrecking ball's on its way. Other than that, that's all I got for you. Thank you.
Thank you. Yui, go ahead.
I participated in the ISBA training workshop last Friday, I think. And what's impressed me the most is they talk about what's the authentic community engagement. And they said the district-wide community forums, social media posts, community surveys are not enough. They encourage some deeper and more communication and more sustainable engagement strategies. And they share some tips. And about how to outreach to the community and involve all the sectors of the community, and how to level the playing field for all the participants with the diverse background and so on, and how to create a shared ownership, not buying into decision that is already made. And they talk about how to connect and influence the official decisions. And they also encourage a small group discussion to team up with to have conversations with specific questions and so on. I found that part particularly helpful, in addition to some update about policies.
Okay, great, thanks. Rachel, what else you got?
There was not board teacher discussion. It was not held for the summer break. I think it's a really important point to comment upon. Dr. Renner talked about the smooth start to the school year, but I think we have to highlight transportation as well, in that how our, I have had opportunity to interact with Mr. Caldwell through various bus issues over the summer that I personally was on the bus. But he, I think not many people know that in order to move buses around our community and make sure that things are repaired and that everything works smoothly and that bus stops are in good spots, he personally has walked much of our school corporation and made sure that on feet he understands what's happening for our students on buses, and that's above and beyond the call of duty. And I really am grateful for the fact that we are having the transportation experience with 3-tier in our community, not one in other surrounding communities, and the struggles that they're having right now. So I just really want to point that out. I have been selected to serve on the as the Region 4 rep for the ISBA Awards Committee, and that met. And so I look forward to the ISBA Fall Conference and the outcome of those. Also have chosen to participate in the ISBA Member Book Club this fall. It focuses on this book by Craybill, great on their behalf, and it deals with focus and structure on student achievement over the adults in the room. And so really I'm enjoying that read, and it's not too late to sign up for it should you want to buy the book. We all received that in our email. And that's all I've got.
Thank you.
Thank
Lawrence, how about you?
I have some personal report. Last Friday, I joined the Leadership Academy for the professional development things. They go through the school board policies. So this is a good refresh of my memories of those so-called must-know policies, that kind of things. And we also they also go through some of the best practice of how to management large project. So it's very helpful. I have a family report in the folder in case anybody want to take a look. And but also I want to share some appreciations to our administration teams and also our teachers. One thing is regarding the literacy endorsement. I think that 80 hours professional development, that's not easy for the summer. A lot of our teacher just 80 hours, they are not really compensated much. And also our admins superintendent, they also walk the walk. So I appreciate you guys set up a good example, continuous learning to our faculties, our students, our teachers. And our teacher also set up good example for our students. So I truly appreciate that. And I also joined our school open ceremony. I appreciate our superintendents. They deliver very encouraging open remarks, especially his son's testimony. I like that. I think that's very encouraging, and I believe our teachers are quite encouraged, including myself. I am encouraged, so I think that's good remark. And also I have some compliment regarding our new high school principals. I receive a lot of compliment from parents They say he's very approachable. He's enthusiastic, passionate about meeting the educational needs of all students. And he outreach, they phone call the parents, and the parents say the first time they receive the phone, they say this must spam. They didn't pick up the phone. And then Chad left a message, and then the second time when our principal called them, they pick up the phone. So they are kind of spoiled. And some parents say he worked during the weekend, so they got emails from during the weekend. And he's also approachable. So when they want to meet the principal just go ahead and schedule a meeting without any, long time. So I really appreciate that, and I can see a lot of positive change, which our new principals, even their first month, from the first month they are in this position. So I appreciate that. And regarding the park, their summer camp running very well, and they are looking for recreation coordinators. So that's kind of vacancy. And the one thing related to our school is their after-school programs. It looks like they are looking for school bus drivers for that program. So I don't know what's updated yet. So that's the last meeting's update. And another thing is regarding their farmers market. So they do some surveys and they change their operation hours per their feedback from communities. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Great.
I attended the Public Schools Foundation for Tippecanoe County last week. The cupcake run is September 22nd. Registration is open, and it was super awesome. So of all 3 school districts, our elementary school is in second place for having the most number of registrants, and our intermediate school is tied for 3rd place. So it's pretty awesome that we have a very supportive community. The fall grant deadline is September 25th for the teachers. That's it.
Super, thank you. Okay, this future meetings, we've got Monday, September 9th at 5 o'clock. We're still going to be here because we're waiting on furniture. I'm sorry, what? September 16th? Oh, it says the 9th. We did do.
Later.
Yeah. Whoops, we sure did. I'm so sorry. It's the 16th, and that will need to be corrected on several things. Thank you, thank you. Still here, though. We're not going to be there quite yet. Labor Day is the 2nd, which is why we're not counting that as the first Monday, and that makes sense with the 16th. Professional Staff Day is Friday, September 20th, so the kids will be out of school, and the ISBA Fall Conference is the 23rd and 24th. And this time I'm going to remember to take a motion to adjourn.
Can I ask a question? We also have a scheduled work session?
Okay, we do.
Scheduled work session also, and that is on August 26th.
Okay, August 26th, also not on the list. Yes, Rachel.
I just am curious, Dr. Renner, what is the theme for the staff PD day this year? Is there a theme, or are they working in their buildings?
There's no particular theme. We've got 2 schools that need to still do the training on, the high school did it last year, Handle with Care.
Okay.
So the elementary and the intermediate need to pick up that training. We also know that there's some work that will be done connected to the new iLearn checkpoints. And then as a new high school principal would have some things to go over as well. So differing topics depending upon the need of the school.
Sounds like really student focused. That's awesome. Thank you.
All right, move to adjourn. Lawrence, seconded by Rachel. And that is adjournment.